what was cool for me when I was going through this to try to find your background and your history is a lot of this I've seen from the outside looking in, just following you over the years, right?
That's amazing, by the way. That's a big compliment.
No, it is, man. It's been a really,
I can't tell you how long I've been watching you.
Yeah, it's been a really cool journey to watch. Yeah. My headphones, I think, just fell out again. But so I want to compliment you on that, right? Because it's been a really cool rise to be able to see, than to see how you've been able to pivot, manipulate all the obstacles. You know, because I don't know, we'll know more, right? But I don't know all of it from the outside. But you're like, I'll see this little skip, like, oh man, I wonder what happened there. You know, is he going to stay in the industry, or is he going to be out? Right? Because you've been around long enough that you've seen what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's that jumping around. So the staying power is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you out here, right? Because that's credibility, right? When you have that staying power for that long a period of time, and then walk the walk, you know, competing in football, then MMA, bodybuilding, and powerlifting, and all that other stuff, and then go on to coach it all. And the Gen Pop, you know, there's a Gen Pop time in there too.
That was a pivotal time where I started to realize, like, everybody's different. And I go, man, I got to be able to coach every walk of life. You know? But it comes down to understanding personalities. We can get into that too. And you got to, so this leads you to a scholarship, correct, for football? Partial scholarship. Partial scholarship, and that. So let me go back a little bit. So it's funny because I grew up in an area in Broward County where it was crime everywhere. So I don't like to say product of your environment, but you kind of get stuck in this lifestyle where you have to be the part, you know, you have to be the tough guy. And for me, I'm living in a predominantly black neighborhood, so I was fighting nonstop. Now, that's no excuse to what I did and how I got to the situation that I had to be in order for me to actually make the first pivot of my life. And I'll never regret. I'll look back and learn. So I gain wisdom through circumstances, through the situations, and it allows me to understand myself a lot more when I go through these difficult times. So at about 15, 16 years old, playing football, at this point, doing well. I got some scholarship offers. Well, basically, I had colleges looking at me. That's where you get letters in the mail at this point, and everybody who's played football knows. My freshman year, I got my first letter from Wisconsin. Then it was Rutgers, North Carolina State, Michigan State. So I had a good amount of colleges looking at me at that point. And obviously, your stature gets
your chest puffs up.
It puffs up, right? And you start to feel like, okay, I'm the man, right? On top of that, I'm still going to school, but I'm living like these two lifestyles. Like I'm in the streets, but I'm also playing ball and trying to be this tough guy, have this tough guy mentality, and selling drugs and doing all this dumb shit. And then I'm also trying to be an athlete. And it was literally like I was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and like I didn't know if like this was really gonna cause an issue, because in my mind, as a young kid, I'm like, I'm just doing my thing. I'm making some money. I'm playing ball. I'm doing what I want to do. I don't have to ask my parents for money, and that was a major thing. Is like I didn't want to ask them for no money because I knew that they didn't have the funds. So I would go out there and make it on my own, not knowing that it wasn't the best option. Right. So I got into some trouble. Ended up getting charged with, well, basically an armed robbery charge with attempted murder. The reason why it was... At what age? 16. Okay. And so I ended up so backtrack, this is like a long story short. So what happened was there were some drug dealers that were basically selling all the drugs in our area. And so this is the first time I ever talked about this. So a lot of things going on there. Me and one of my best friends decided that they weren't going to be on our block anymore. So as a tough guy, like, we're going to take over our spot. So we set them up. I was the one that altercated everything. Like I set it up. I was the one with the gun. And long story short, we ended up robbing them. Ended up hitting them over the head with the gun, And we ran out of there, got their drugs. We robbed them for their drugs, not their money, nothing else. But I took their cell phone so they couldn't call anybody. That's where it got sticky. That's where it got interesting. So about 2 weeks went by, right? I'm not proud of this, by the way. But 2 weeks went by, and I remember going to school, and my best friend, who always rides the bus with me, wasn't there. So I'm like, that's strange, because he would have told me he's not going to school, right? We had practice that day. I'm a junior in high school at this point. And so I go, all right, let me call him. Didn't answer. I'm like, that's strange, because we usually talk every day, right? So I go to school, and I'm getting like these side conversations, and people are coming up to me like, yo, man, you know, your boy got caught. He got arrested last night after track practice. And I go, what? I'm like, for what? And he's like, they caught him doing something. It was like a robbery or something like that. So then they called me into the office, and they go, you want to tell us anything? And I go, no. Yeah, I'm good. And he's like, well, we got your boy. He's like, he's locked up right now. You gonna say anything? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So my mother, we had a close relationship, real close. She was in gangs all her life. Grew up in Queens, and she understood the game. The problem was that, you know, for me, I had two sides of myself. I was trying to make it in life, but then again, I had this pull from the neighborhood, from me trying to be this person that was like my shadow side. And so I called her up and I said, I think I'm in trouble. And I found out that I was on Broward County's most wanted list for like 4 weeks straight, and didn't know this. And I had a car at that time. I sold enough drugs that I was able to buy my own car. And at that point, that day, so when he didn't come to school, I knew that something was wrong. Then that day, I happened to look outside, and as I'm walking through the parking lot, I go to my last class. In my last class, I have my football coaches there. So I go to his class for my last class. They closed the gate where you can leave for all the seniors. They usually have that open. So when they closed the gate, I automatically knew that they were trying to trap me in the school.
What do you mean, the football gate or just the school gate?
The school gate in general.
I got it.
Yeah. So my football coach was my last teacher.
Yeah, I get it.
For my last class. So I go to his class, and he looks at me with like this look of like horror. You know, he knew that it was over. And I sat down, and almost I felt like everybody knew at that point, right? Everybody was looking at me side-eyed.
So what are you feeling at this time?
I'm just a little nervous, but I'm also like, they have nothing. Yeah. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm good, but it's like, it's nerve-wracking, you know, because it was all like hearsay. It wasn't like they caught me doing something, they had cameras or anything like that. The kid that was with the kid that I actually robbed, he ended up telling his parents that we took his cell phone. He didn't end up telling his parents that we took weed from them, right? So the parents were crazy. Like, you know, they called the cops, called the school, everything. So understandably, right? I would too now at this time. And, you know, just me trying to be a tough guy, that caused us the issue. Right, it was more about the cell phones than the weed. Because in my mind, I'm like, I just robbed them for their weed. At that point, I had already gave back the kid his phone. Like, I sold it back to him. I sold his own phone back to him.
Okay. Yeah.
So, so I get to the class, and then I'm sitting there for a little bit, and then I hear the phone ring, and I see my coach go, yeah, he's here, and looks up at me and just looks his head down. You know, hangs up the phone. And within like 2 seconds later, you know, BSO's knocking at the door, and they're like, come on, let's go. And I'm like, all right, you got me. You know, and we're talking like, these are like, we call them raiders, but they're high-level SWAT guys that were coming in. Actually, the guys that I work with now, which is amazing. And that's full circle. I'll talk about that later.
Shit.
Yeah. And so at that point, I'm like super respectful. Like, it's their job. I get it. So I'm in there. I'm in the car, and I'm like, yo, man. So talking to him about certain things. He's like, man, you really messed up, huh? And I'm like, I guess. You know, I don't know what you guys got, but you know, I'm not too sure what's going on. You know, just playing the part or whatever. And so at that point, I'm 16. About to be 17, going into my senior year. This is like one of the most pivotal years in a high school football player's career. And Yeah, I'm locked up. I'm in the detention center as a youth. And usually when you get in trouble as a youth, you go to the detention center, you do your 21 days and you get out of there.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, okay, I'll do these 21 days. We'll have like, you know, a mini camp, you know, and I'll be out. Fought a couple times in there. And then by the 21 days, you know, they're like, all right, I'm ready to go home. And no, you're not going nowhere. Like, you got direct filed as an adult. You're going to the county jail. You're going to await trial. And I go, and my heart dropped. I'm like, oh shit, it's real. So I'm where the detention center is, it's like right down the street from the county jail. So like we're taking the trip there, and as I'm driving, I'm just thinking about like, what the hell, you know? And we get to the county jail, you know, they do all the search, you know, bend over, all that bullshit. And I get the call, I get one phone call, and I call my mother. And she goes, don't say anything, you're gonna be fine. We'll figure this out. Right? And then all I needed to hear was that. Mm-hmm. So super optimistic at that point. Right? Had super. I was faithful at that point. And so I'm sitting in there, and all I kept thinking was like, this isn't me. This isn't it. I'm like, God put me on this planet for a reason. I said, there's got to be a better way. And I know for a fact that I'm getting out of this situation, and I'm putting myself in a better position to be successful. From then on, I've never seen the inside of a jail cell. I've never been arrested. Maybe a couple of tickets here and there, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And I work with the guys now.
So how did this play out? So after how did it play out? So
as we're going through, I'm sitting in the county. Now, I'm in the county jail for about a month now.
Yeah.
You know, and at that point, funny story, we're in there on the 5th floor. The 5th floor is like juvenile kids, you know, 18, right around that age. And these kids were bad as shit, man. Like, you know, flooding the pod and everything else, and they would shut our stuff down, shut our water off, so like shit and piss would be sitting in there for days, and it was a lot. They cut the lights on all night long so you couldn't sleep, you know, eating bullshit, like food that probably messed our stomachs up worse than ever, you know. And then these guys would want to train, so they knew that I worked out a lot. They knew that I played football, so they'd be like, yo, how do I do this? And so I started to put together little workouts with like towels and the bedspread and partner workouts with your celly. And I was like, oh man, I'm putting together routines. So I'm like, this is cool. So I started putting together routines for the guys that were in there with me. Eventually they couldn't find anything. I had a great lawyer. They ended up giving us 5 years probation and like some restitution. Mm-hmm. And also I had to speak at a couple of events about my situation. But then at that point I got dropped out of high school because they drop you out immediately. So I was doing like a drop-in program inside the county jail, and then I had to go back into another drop-in program once I got out to get back into school. At that point they kicked me out of my high school that I was at. So I'm trying to find a school. And I go, there's only 2 schools that I really want to go to. And it was one school that had just been to the States prior, which was Deerfield Beach High School. And so from there, I go, all right, we're looking around for schools. And this is down the line. So I'm still on probation, right, as I'm going into high school, my senior year. At that point, I'm fresh out of county jail, going into Deerfield Beach High School, and you would have thought that I came out of like a 10-year stint, the way I was walking around, right? I had gold teeth, I had shaved head, I was already fully tattooed, and I would walk around with a chip on my shoulder as the new football guy that came out of jail, right? And I look at it now, and it was funny to me because, like,
how was it perceived though by those there?
They loved it. Yeah, they were like, "Yo, this new white boy linebacker, fresh out of fucking jail," you know. And I had a chip on my shoulder, like I had stuff to prove at that point. But I also was very humble that I knew that shit could be taken away from me in any moment. So at that point, I was humble, but I was also ready, and I was serious because at that point there was no turning back. At that point, though, all of the colleges just dropped me. So all the universities were gone at that point. I had a few, like, D2s and like, D3 schools looking at me at that point. I'm 5'8", 205. But I could hit. I was all county. And, you know, I knew the game. Yeah. I was really good at that. So as the season goes by, I did really well. Jason Pierre-Paul was on our team. We had Deshaun Robinson's on our team. Shoelace, played for Michigan. play for the NFL. So we had a good stacked team that year. We beat one of the best teams in the state, almost in the country that year too as well. Did well enough to get a partial scholarship to a Division I AA, Alabama State University, which is an HBCU, and stood out there too as well. When I left Florida and went to Alabama, a culture shock occurred because, like, I'm coming from South Florida where it's very diverse. You go to Alabama and it's like black and white, you know, and I'm at a HBCU. I'm the only white kid there besides probably the kicker, you know, of course, kicker.
Yeah.
But no, I just felt like I was out of place and I was missing home a lot. At that point, I was getting in fights, like nonstop. Getting in fights with the teammates, getting in fights with people in school, and I was just like, man, I would stick it out, but I just wasn't happy.
Yeah.
You know, wasn't happy. And at that point, I was getting a lot of concussions, a lot of injuries, because I was playing middle linebacker and strong safety, and I was the gunner on the kickoff team. So I was busting wedges every day. So 300-pounders lined up, I run straight through them. And obviously, I didn't win all the battles, but I was like kamikaze, just make it happen. You know, bust through the wedge and allow your teammates to make the tackle. And from there, just like now it still bothers me. Pinched nerves, concussions. And my family called me, or my mother called me, and it hit hard. And she goes, man, we have no money. She's like, we are struggling. And I go, at that point, you know, NCAA at that time wouldn't allow us to get jobs, no sponsorships, none of that shit. So I was poor too. I had nothing. I was broke as shit, broke college student. You know, we get food because we were on partial scholarship, but that was about it. I couldn't go out anywhere. I couldn't go to the movies. I couldn't take out anybody on a date. So it was just rough. And then on top of that, your family's going through it back at home. So my sister, she's 10 years younger than me. I basically helped raise her. She was going through it. She had some issues. So I had this push and pull thing going on where I didn't know if I wanted to stay there in Alabama, try to ride it out, fight it out, potentially do something, maybe go to Arena League or whatever, or possibly make it to the NFL, or go back home and help my family. And it took me about a week and a half to really like figure out what's the plan of action. And then from there, I think one day I woke up and I was like, let me just do this. I gotta take care of the people that I love. So I went up to my coach, my head coach, and I was like, listen, like I need to leave. And he's like, what do you mean, for like a weekend? I was like, no, I gotta leave. He's like, my family's going through it. I gotta help him. He's like, well, can we help out in any way? I'm like, not if you can give me some money. He's like, well, we can't do that. And I was like, I gotta go. So scholarship gone, go back home. Now at that point, my family moved from Broward County, which is the neighborhood I grew up in, to Port St. Lucie, which is a small little neighborhood, kind of reminds me of London. And there was nothing there. It was like, at that point, there was nothing there. It grew. It's grown now. And I was like, man, so my initial process was going to be, all right, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna take care of my family, I'm gonna use my degrees that I'm gonna get, and then I'll figure it out, right? But at the same time, I still wanted to compete. So I'm a natural competitor. And I was boxing on the off season in Alabama. So I was doing like amateur fights in Alabama, unbeknownst to the NCAA. So I had to go out for an alias name.
Yeah.
So as I'm doing it, I'm like, I want to box, I want to fight. Like I feel like.
So what's going on with the schooling at this time?
So I'm still going to school.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to Kaiser University, finishing up my degree.
Got it.
So now I'm full time there.
Why did you just, with your background, with what you're telling me, why?
To go there.
Why continue with it? Because now there's not a partial.
I know.
You're going to go in debt.
Yeah, absolutely, I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I wanted to finish. Like, hands down, I wanted to finish something that I started. And it was the only place I could go to allow me to still do all the other things I needed to do.
Yeah.
So I was training for fights. I was sneaking people into Gold's Gym and LA Fitness and training them for $20 a session. I would go to school from an extended amount of time. But because of the system there, I was able to like make sure that I had everything scheduled out. So my day started out as soon as I got to Port St. Lucie. I signed up at American Top Team Port St. Lucie with Dean Thomas. And I was like, man, I want to fight. He was like, cool, come to the class. And then he transitioned me out of boxing and went right into MMA because I knew that MMA was on the rise.
Yeah.
So I'm training that, and then I'm trying to finish my degree. Now, my days look like, okay, 4 a.m. wake up. This is in the beginning. I was probably like 20 years old. Wake up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. Train a client at 5 that was about 45 minutes away from me at Sampson's, at Tony's gym. Then I would go to school from like 8 to 1 all the way through. Then I would go train myself at about 3 p.m. Then I would train a client at 5. Then I would train another night class sparring at like 7, 8 o'clock, and then I would do it all over again. And then I would try to get at least 2 sessions in a week, or 2 sessions in a day of MMA, because I was an amateur now competing. That kind of went all the way through until about 21 years old when I turned pro. I finally got my degree from Kaiser, finished that up, so I was good there. So notch in my belt, boom. Now I'm like, I need to make more money because I'm broke again. And only thing I know how to do is hustle. So at that time, I'm like, all right, let me go to these gyms. Let me go to these local gyms. Let me go to LA Fitness. Let me go to a local global gym that I can, put my resume in and just see what I can do. So I went to a gym. It was like a local fitness gym. And I ran one of the lead trainers through a session. He loved it. He was like, you did awesome. They ran a background check. They saw I had a felony charge. They're like, man, we can't take you. So I'm like, fuck. All right, what do I do? So I'm still fighting, not making any money. And at that point, Tony goes, you want to start training people here? I'm like, absolutely. So I started training people there, making money, building my clientele up. At that time, I'm building my clientele up so much that when the rent gets upped, I'm like, why am I here? So then I'm like, I can just open up my own spot, not knowing all the other shit that goes with it, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I'll open up a small spot. At this point, it was like I found an 800 square foot storage closet, $500 a month rent, easy. And I had 12 clients that came with me, and then I started running boot camps. At that same time, I had turned pro as a fighter.
So you're fighting. Okay, this is where I have this big gap, boom. Yeah, where the funnel expands, right? So you're fighting, you're working with clients in one gym still, right? And then you have your own for the boot camps.
Yep.
All right, and there's something else in there. You're online. You started some online at that point?
Not yet. Okay. So in order for me to build my gym, I had to go heavy on social media.
Yeah.
So I was doing Facebook at the time. There was no Instagram at that point.
Yes.
So I was doing Facebook heavy. So I was like, I have a group page, I have a fan page, or I have a gym page, and I have my own personal page. So I started doing that, and then I opened a YouTube channel because I was like, I need to showcase the training that we're doing, on video.
Yeah.
So I started doing that just to showcase the boot camps, right? And then it kind of transitioned, I can show my fights and my training too as well. That's cool, let's do that. And at this point, it's just like 2011, 2012. And so I grew that gym. I started with 12 people. The boot camp started to spread because of just the way I attacked it. Like I attacked it with so much energy, so much passion that it just grew, and it was authentic. I pushed them harder than I would ever do anybody at this point now.
Yeah.
Not knowing, but I knew that even though these people were regulars, general pop clients, they love to push themselves. They wanted that because they haven't gotten that. And they respected me as as a fighter, as a man, because of what I do on a professional level. So they were like, man, I'm going to go to this. And I called it battle camp. I didn't call it boot camp. And I called my boot campers Spartans. I called them, they started as a soldier, and then they would graduate to be a Spartan. So I would have this tier system just like you would in martial arts. So they'd come in with a white shirt and they'd leave with a black shirt depending on how long they've been in the system and if they were there consistently. And I would do these Spartan challenges every other month, and I would pick 3 people to compete. And if they passed all the shit that I had them go through, they would become a DFP Spartan. So at this point, I opened up Daru Fitness Performance, DFP for short, and I had the battle camps going on. And since it was just a small area, I met my wife there. She was my first 12 clients. co-workers told other co-workers, friends told other friends, family members told other family members, and then I had a big group. At that point, we're 6 months in, and I had to leave that spot, go to a 1,900 square foot facility where I was training MMA. Dean left that school. I took it over. He went to another facility, and then from there, we grew out of that spot within another 6 months. Mm-hmm. The only thing open, though, at that time was an 11,000 square foot warehouse next door to the 1,900 square feet. And that was the only spot I could get. Luckily, I got a good deal on that spot. So I went from 1,900 square feet to 11,000 square feet. I couldn't even fill it out. Yeah. It was a big open area. And time went by. I'm about 23, 24 now.
So there's 2 locations at this point. Is that right?
There's one location.
One location.
It just switched.
I got it.
I just moved the 1,900 to 11,000. Yeah, it was right next door.
Okay.
And at that point, like, big business now. Like, I'm blowing up, right? I got over 300 members. Like, I'm doing it. But I had no real business sense. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't even have QuickBooks at that point. Yeah. I think I just got a fucking business bank account. Like, literally, yeah. I was putting money in shoe boxes when I started, mm-hmm. right? And I started to understand a little bit more about business, about generating a profit, making sure that I understand gross and net and everything else. But at that point, I was running myself into the ground. I was training all the classes. I was doing all the training sessions with my high school guys. I was training my fighters, and I was training myself too, because now I'm a pro. The problem that I had there, though, was, as you can see, my focus was all over the place. Yeah. So something had to give. If my business blew up, my career went down. So I wasn't able to train as much as I could. I wasn't focused on the task, and I would lose fights that I should have won. I lost 3 straight fights that I damn sure should have won, which was ridiculous to me. Like, losing in dumb decisions, or losing off of a submission that I should have got out of. So that kind of played a role in figuring out what's my next steps. And then from there, I had to really take a look at myself, see what's going to be the end goal for me, and look at the vision, big vision overall. At that point, I started to delegate a lot of my time, to other trainers that I had. So now I had trainers working for me. I had 7 trainers at that point, now running some classes, doing their own thing, paying me some rent. And I had 11,000 square feet, 300 members, everything was going good, and I was able to focus on my training at that point. Yeah, which was good. It gave me a good 3 months to really like focus and hone in on the game plan for what my fight was going to be.
Well, I have a sense everything originally was there to finance your fighting. Yeah, that's how it started, right? Okay. Yep. All right. So now you're able to do that, kind of.
Yeah. Now I'm able to pay people to go train these classes. I'm able to pay for myself to train, and I'm living good. Yes. Right. And now at this point, I'm also living with my girlfriend, who was my girlfriend, my wife now. So now everybody's taken care of. Financially, everybody's taken care of. Yeah. At 24, I'm good. But now I have to get back into fighting. Yeah. So like, had a couple of my teammates that I would train that would stay after, and I put a cage in my gym to specifically be able to train right after I train other people. So instead of going there, wasting the time, I would just tell them to come to me. So I had a cage, I had a ring, I had mats, had everything in there. So I would have guys come in at 11 o'clock at night, and we'd train for like 3 hours. But I was getting training in. I was consistently going. And I ended up winning that last fight and beating the shit out of dude. And it was good because it showed that if I focus on something, obviously, right, it works. Same thing with the business. If I focus on it, it's gonna come out successful. So at that point, I'm like, all right, I'm doing well. I have everything in order to focus on the things that I need to focus on. And one training session, my teammate, he comes and we're doing just like tech sparring. I'm 2 weeks before my next fight. Good fight for me. I'm like super confident, and hits me in the back of the head. He does like a spinning back kick, and his heel comes down right in the back of my head, and I get concussed. And I'm like, damn, 2 weeks out, not a good look. So I finished the training session, but I was still concussed. I was like, man, I'm still not feeling it. all the signs, right? Nausea, dizziness, forgetfulness, all of that. So I went to the neurologist. They ran some tests, and they basically told me at the end of it all, like, if you don't stop by the time you're 50, you're gonna have Alzheimer's, you're gonna have dementia, whatever. And like, you gotta stop. And I go, man, you have no idea what you just told me. This is a neurologist, he doesn't understand. And so it took me like 2 weeks to really figure it out, because at that point, I was like, let's just add more shit onto my plate. Like, oh, let's go get my PhD now. Let's drive down to FAU and let's go. And that's another hour and a half away. And my son was just about to be born. So there was a lot going on. And there was a lot of things that I needed to focus on, and a lot of things that I needed to prepare myself for, that I knew that if I were to keep going in this direction, that it could possibly end up very bad for me and my family. So it took me 2 weeks, and I called Dean, because he was the only one that I really could talk to for this particular incident. And I go, man, what do you think? And he goes, well, if it was your knee or your back, we can kind of work around it, but it's your brain. You can't really mess with that. And when he said that, he was like, but listen, you're a successful business. You have a successful business. You're a successful businessman. You're a good leader. There's so many ways that you can make this happen on a different level. And I go, it's not what I want to hear, but, you know, whatever. So I hung up the phone, then thought about it, and I ended up like making just an announcement that I'm stopping competing, like I'm retiring, you know, whatever. And from there, I didn't want anything to do for the first year and a half. I didn't want nothing to do with MMA. I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want to train it. I didn't want to do anything. So at that point, I fought at 155 pounds. So I now went from 205 to like 178 walking around. And I'm like, man, I got to get bigger. Like, I look small. So I was like, how can I get bigger and still compete? And I go, I got it. I'll do bodybuilding. So I started doing bodybuilding. And I found a coach that was nearby. It was one of my friends. He put me through a bodybuilding show. So I learned all the details on how to like isolate movements and just put more focus on the muscle, just like you did. And I go, man, this is really good because this helps me with my coaching. So now I'm learning different levels and different ways to actually get somebody better. So I did that, and I focused on that. Nothing else was going on in my life except for running the business and focusing on bodybuilding. And it kind of went hand in hand, because I just go to the gym, I'd train, I'd eat my meals, and then I'd go home. For 6 months, I went all in. I watched nothing but bodybuilding YouTube, you know, did nothing but bodybuilding movements, ate, slept, drank like a bodybuilder. And so I did well. I took first place, I believe, in my division, and then second overall, right? Small little show, doesn't matter. But I looked the best that I could look, which was really what I wanted. I got up to like 210, dropped it down to like 181, and I was shredded.
Was it enough of a distraction to take your brain away from MMA?
It was, because it was nonstop.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yeah,
It's non-fucking stop. The worst thing was the hardest thing was the diet.
Yeah.
And at the last minute, the last week, I had to like deplete, and I just wasn't depleting. Like I went 4 days straight, just white fish, egg whites, and I believe it was asparagus for 4 days straight, 3 meals a day, three or four meals a day. And I just would not deplete. Finally had to make the weight class, so I did what I knew best, cut weight. So I go in the sauna, and I looked good on that Friday. I went into the sauna and just fucking flattened out because I just cutting weight like an idiot.
Yeah.
But after that, I was like, you know what, this isn't really for me. I didn't really like the whole vibe of it, like standing on stage and doing all that. It was a little bit too egotistical in a sense, you know. And I was kind of, and 100% hands down to all those guys that do it, man. I got friends that still do bodybuilding. These guys are awesome. But for me, it just wasn't it.
Yeah, when I went through it, it was kind of the same thing, where respect for the discipline.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's any sport more disciplined, because it's 24/7.
Absolutely. You have to be, and as an athlete, you do have to be egotistical. You have to be selfish.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
For me, there was no reward.
Yeah.
You know, like for a fight, you train for the fight. Then you win the fight, you're like, fuck yeah, this is like.
Perfect example. So this is when I said, I'm not going to do this again. After a fight, especially after I won my last fight, the high that you have off of that fight, no matter how fucked up you get, you know, and usually it's like foot aches, you probably kicked an elbow, or like, you know, your head's ringing, your jaw hurts maybe, your fucking hands are bruised up. But you can go out and party because you're on so much of a high that it's like, and you feel like you're the man because it's primal. So you go, oh, I could do this. Then after the bodybuilding show, all day long depleted, posing and doing all this shit. After the bodybuilding show, I wanted to go lay down. I was like, I don't want to go anywhere. That's when I knew, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me, because the reward wasn't as big. Yeah. And honestly, yes, you have to adopt the process, and I love the process more than the reward. I think that was the biggest thing, was like that reward sucked. I was like, whatever. But that process was cool. Yeah. It showed me a lot. It taught me a lot. With fighting, you get both. It's like through that process, you're going to become a tough motherfucker. But after the fact, you become the man. Yeah. You see what I mean? Yeah. And then I was like, you know what? Strength sports is where it's at. Because I was doing strongman with Tony, and even off camp, I would do strongman because it's just such a high correlation, right? There's a lot of transfer from MMA and strongman. And MDLP, that's when I met Mike. He came up to my gym. I had a big strongman community. I had all the guys come in, you know, and so that's when I met Elliot Holst and all those guys. And so we developed like a Florida strongman community. And I had all the equipment, which was dope. I was the only gym in Florida to have all the strongman equipment, all the implements. Yeah. So we'd run shows in there, and then like it was fun. We had every Saturday was a strongman day. So I wanted to do that, but I also wanted to compete in powerlifting. Yeah. Because I was like, that's something that I've always wanted to do. Just from following you and Louie and seeing everything there, I was like, man, powerlifting is similar from a mindset perspective as a fight. And you know this very well.
Well, kinda.
It's like one and done though, right?
Yeah.
One and done. And then you get back and you go, okay, I gotta calm down, then I gotta do it again. Yeah. Right? So, but I did see correlation. Yeah. Because overcoming that bar is overcoming the fight. Okay. Right? So now, when I see a certain amount of weight on that bar where I know it could probably crush me, it's the same concept and same feel as I get when they close the cage door. So I was like, I was looking for that feeling again. Now, at this point, I had figured that I still want to get back into MMA. I want to be a part of it. I miss it. I miss the camaraderie. What brought that back? I don't remember. I think it was just, I think I watched the fight, and I was like, man, I really miss this shit. And I was like, I want to do jiu-jitsu again, because I know I could do that without killing myself. So I started doing jiu-jitsu, and that's really what happened. I watched the fight, and I was like, I want to get back into it. Not compete, but I want to be a part of it, and I know I can coach these guys. How far away was that now? How many years away from? So I was 25. Yeah. So it was only a year. So a year. Yeah, long enough to create a gap. Yeah, and at that time I was powerlifting. I was getting into powerlifting, and I still had the gym, and then I met up with Dean again. And I go, man, listen, can you meet with me? You know, I want to talk to you. He's like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. So we met at a coffee shop, and I go, listen, I know I've been away, but I want to get back into it, like really. He's like, well, you've been doing jiu-jitsu. I'm like, nah, that's not it. I want to get back into MMA. He's like, you can't compete in it. I was like, no, but I want to coach. It's like, you have anybody? And this point, he was at American Top Team, the headquarters. So now he was a full-time coach there. He had closed the gym down, or at least he sold it to his partner. And I go, so you have anybody in mind that you would want me to work with? And he goes, you know what? You may be in luck. The strength coach that we have is actually leaving. So if you want to bring your resume down, you know, you can test your luck. And I was like, I'll do it today. So I got my resume. I drove down there. It was like a 90-minute drive. And as soon as I got there, I met with the strength coach, good guy, super knowledgeable, and just telling him my story, you know, how I fought here, I trained here. You know, I would come down Tuesdays and Thursdays and spar with the guys on Block KO. And so the coaches knew who I was, and the fighters knew, you know, also. They were like, what are you doing here? They didn't know me as a coach, they knew me as a fighter. And I remember Hector Lombard was the first person that greeted me. And obviously Hector, if you guys know who Hector is, like, he's crazy. Like, but he's a good guy. Like, outside of the training world, he's a good guy. He's like the Mike Tyson of MMA, right? And he was at that point in his career where he was like 22 fight win streak, Bellator champion, big, like stocky, and just killing people, running through guys. So his stamp of approval helped me get in there. And then King Mo Lawal also loved the training. And then Dustin took to the training. And then Joanna came in and took to the training. And then at that point, they were like, all right, I was going down there for 2 months not getting paid every day. Well, 4 days out the week, every day when I had to. And I knew for a fact that this was going to play out in the right direction. As long as I stay the course and I do it the right way and I leverage. And I told my wife, I go, I don't know, I'm taking a big pay cut for sure. I don't know if I can sustain the gym and still come down here and work with these high-level guys. I have to be full-time. And she goes, well, I trust you. And from that point on, I was like, all right. She gave me a stamp of approval. I feel good now. So I sold the gym. That's like 6 years of work, you know, and I'm like, here, because I got a bigger plan. So at that time, I was like, all right, I need a small spot, though, because I still need to do my content, and I still had some personal clients that I wanted to work with. So I opened up a spot like right near my house, super convenient, and I would do that on the days that I wouldn't go down there. So at that point, I'm driving down there 4 days a week. I'm training clients 3 times a week and shooting content up at my spot. And I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning of like content creation, like putting the camera in front of me, just old school with the whiteboard, knocking out some tutorial videos, you know. And, you know, things started to open up. So when I got there, they were in the transition from going into the place that they were in to the 40,000 square foot facility that they were going into. So I was in that transition phase with them. When I got there, I said, I got a 5-year plan here. I know what I'm gonna do. And so I wrote out my goals. I wrote out the vision that I had for myself. I wanted to be trainer of the year, you know, for the World MMA Awards. I was like, that was one thing that I wanted, because I could see, you know, guys like Mike Dolce win it and all that. I was like, I want that. And I remember telling Dean, like, I want that. He was like, why you want that? I was like, because I want it. I was like, I just want it. And at the time, I was also competing in powerlifting, so I was doing a lot there, you know. But it was just because I wanted to.
That was one of the goals, but what was the vision?
The vision overall?
Well, yeah,
stamp myself as one of the best MMA strength and conditioning coaches in the world.
Yes.
And then also work with multiple world champions. And then whatever happens from there happens.
Yeah.
Now there's a bigger vision, because now there's a next step. So at that point, you know, a couple years go by, and, you know, I'm winning world titles with my guys, and like, and 100%, man, I'll take nothing from this. Like, I knew for a fact that if I didn't get that opportunity, I don't know where I would be. So I'm 100% humbled and appreciative of all the opportunities, no doubt about it. It's who you know to get you in the door, but it's what you know that keeps you there. And then from there, it's like, how can you stamp your place in this whole in this whole industry, and how am I going to do it appropriately?
Well, to rewind back, I mean, it was. The way I'm trying to relate this to my journey as a powerlifter, right? Yeah. So it's my identity at a certain point in time that I can't do it, or decide both, right? Can't and decide, right? So I don't think any of us want to make excuses and say it was just the concussion or it was just the shoulder. There's accumulation of things.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's still an identity crisis, thus you bodybuild and all this other stuff.
Yep.
And then you find your way back into it, but yet you're on a balance beam of disaster, right? Because on one side, you want to be in it, right? On the other side, you're trying to figure out, can you coach it? So you have to shift your identity in a way.
I had to shift my identity my entire life.
Yes.
Which is maybe a downfall, and it's a detriment in a lot of ways, but it's also something that allows me to be adaptive.
I don't know how much this was a shift more so than a bend. Like, the shift would be bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Right? That's a
definitely.
big shift,
It's
right?
a big shift, but you got to think, like, I learned a lot there.
Yeah, but back to MMA is a bend.
Yeah.
You're still around everything that you love, just in a different way.
Yep. I think that doing that showed me that I love being a part of the sport. I wanted to help individuals. And at that particular time, around the age of like 27, 28, is where I was like, this is my identity. I'm a coach, and this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
At the same time, to better myself as a coach, I still need to be a practitioner.
Yeah.
So it's the same. So like powerlifting was simple for me to do.
Oh yes.
As opposed to fighting.
Yeah.
I can't fight and then coach fighting, you know, which I was doing for a little bit, or at least fighting and coaching strength and conditioning for fighting.
Yeah.
And I was doing that for a while, and I was like, that it can't be that. It has to be a little bit simpler than that. So powerlifting only took 3 days out of my week, do a little bit of accessories here and there, but it was also giving me an understanding of how to lift.
Well, there's only a couple motor abilities there too.
Yeah.
Right. So you step into a ring. Yeah.
It's a lot easier. A lot easier. I had a couple powerlifters that wanted to train with me. I was like, oh, that's all we got to do. Yeah, I forgot about that. So usually I'm working with multi-directional movements, bioenergetic demands, all of that. But
so when you start working with the fighters, then you discover that.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not powerlifting, it's not bodybuilding, and I get criticized because I say that's kind of simple training, but it doesn't mean the discipline's not there.
Yeah.
But it's not multifaceted.
Yeah. There's not a lot of variables.
Yes. So now you're all into this, and the variables need to increase.
Yeah.
So your education has to increase around that. So what was the pursuit then?
Yeah. So I was trying to learn everything, like everything. And I was going to every certification course, every seminar I could get my hands on, because I was a one-man show now, right? So I needed to learn mobility. I needed to learn how to properly program. I needed to learn how to produce power in different directions. Just a lot of different things. But I also needed to be the physical therapist, the psychologist, the massage therapist, like all these different things, because I couldn't, like I could outsource it, but I knew that they wouldn't do that. So I had to adopt a lot of these modalities of training and be competent enough in it to help all the athletes. On top of that, I had to learn about energy systems on a whole nother level. I needed to learn about how, I went through so many different periodization schemes and models of training because of the situation that I was in, where that really showed me how to prioritize, how to schedule, and it helped in my life too as well. Because I knew if I didn't have a proper schedule down, if I didn't have prioritization, if I didn't have focus points, if I didn't have a standard procedure on how to actually operate, then nothing will go as effective and as successful as it can be. So with that, I was playing around with a bunch of different things. I started with, obviously you start with block. I went with linear for a little bit. I went to tier system. I was doing triphasic on the off camp. But I was like, conjugate has always worked for me. It's always worked for me since I was in high school, in my own career, and now it's gonna work here. And the problem though that I had was I couldn't stick to a traditional 4-day-a-week split because we didn't have enough time. So with that, I started to learn all these things. I was heavily into like all the West Side stuff, all of your stuff. And I was like, all right, let's just try this. And I tried it on my best guys, and I tried it on myself. And what I found was that guys were maintaining their adaptations, and they were getting better, and they weren't delineating all these demands that we were going through because weight cut issues, a bunch of different training modalities that they had to do throughout the days. We just needed to touch everything all at once. We needed to turn the dials on, and we needed to turn on the highest of what we're trying to focus on.
All right, so for those practitioners that are, or strength coaches that are coming up, I want to point something out here, right? So you're working with the fighters 4 days a week, and it's taking you an hour and a half, I think you said, just to drive there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's 4 complete days. And then on the other days, you're training clients basically to pay the bills, right? Mm-hmm. And content. Mm-hmm. So now you have to learn all these other things too, with the strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
So how many hours a week are you putting into your craft?
Oh, it is. I mean, it's every day. So it was like at least 16, 18-hour days every day.
For how long?
I mean, it's never stopped. It's never stopped.
Well, I'm pointing this out because I think this is a big component that gets missed.
Yeah, definitely.
That it's nonstop.
And now being a business owner too as well, it's like it's never ending.
Yeah.
It's never ending. And you gotta love it. If you don't love it, then it's not going to be sustainable. Everybody knows that. I mean, you should know that. I talk to the coaches that I mentor now, and it's like they're engulfed in this shit. They love it, and it's because they see the results. They see how they can help people and how they can, you know, generate successful productivity with the people that they work with, the people that that put their trust in them. And that's really what drives you. You gotta love to help people. You gotta love to serve.
There's still a whole lot of this, though, that you don't, right? That just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Right? So it's, I kind of push back a little bit on you gotta love it. Yes, I mean, that's kind of like a given, right? But there's a big chunk that I think people avoid doing, and that's why they don't succeed. And that's the part of all this work that they don't like.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the bullshit that comes with it. And the financial aspect, the paperwork, the marketing, the advertising, the relationship building, the networking, you know, this just...
Well, I found that the weaknesses that I have, I ended up loving it because it was something that I knew that if I plugged that gap, if I made that link in that chain stronger, then I would be better.
What's an example of one?
Business in general.
Yeah.
Right. So my marketing was always on point just because I knew how to gain attention.
Yeah.
But it was also like the logistics, the analytical side of it, understanding, you know, profit and loss statements, understanding how to, you know, optimally keep a higher LTV and making sure that these people stay and sustain and retain.
Yeah, for those that don't know, lifetime value.
There you go.
Well, let's talk about that because they don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so when did that come into your dialogue? And then when did you learn the importance? Because this is a big one, man.
It is a big one. I mean, you have to be able to sustain your clients. You have to be able to retain your clients.
Yes.
Like I've had fighters for like 7-8 years that still are with me. And you have to always find a way to keep them interested, keep them progressing, and keep them around. And a lot of times they're just super comfortable with you.
Well, do you look at that when you're looking at your acquisition costs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So like if I'm going in and I'm trying to acquire, let's say, an individual that I know that if we stay for the long term, they're gonna succeed, right? And the longer I have them, the better they're gonna be. So from the start, when I bring on an individual, now that could be from marketing, that could be from word of mouth, that could be from another friend, whatever, or that could be from them following me on Instagram, right? I bring them in, I sit them down for at least 90 minutes, and we vet out everything. We go over all their insecurities. We go over all their challenges. We go over all their goals, their aspirations, everything.
What do some of those questions look like?
Just like, you know, what's your true purpose? Like I peel back the layers.
How do you, okay, so say you ask that to me and I'm an athlete, like to fucking win, dude.
No. So then I go, why do you want to win?
Because I do, it's all I've ever done, right?
Yeah. So like, do you find yourself as that's your identity, is to be a winner?
Oh yeah.
So that right there gives me the understanding of how I need to push you. So that's interesting. Because I know that your level of success is going to be dictated off of how well you train and your effort that you put in. And when you suck and when you don't want to come in the gym, I say, don't you want to be a winner? What happened?
What other answers are they going to give, though?
There's a lot.
Okay.
Because you go back to like family. Because with fighters, it's different, right? There's a different level. Like, because when you're fighting for money, you're fighting for fame, you're fighting for the title.
Okay.
There's a lot of different variables there.
So they could be doing it just for their family.
Yeah, a lot of times.
To pay the bills.
A lot of times, yeah. Some guys have those aspirations, like I want to be a world champion, I want to be the most known. And I have young kids that come to me, they want that.
Okay.
You know? They don't have families yet. But it transitions, and then you have to have that. You have to have another meeting with them throughout their career and be like, what has changed? You have family now, you have kids now. Right? What has changed? What is your purpose now? And I've seen it with a lot of high level guys. They're like, I used to want to be a world champion. I used to want to have millions of dollars. Now I just want to take care of my family. Now I just want to be around for my family. You know, so I have to make the right decisions, training wise, schedule wise, you know, making sure that I'm there for them, and things change.
Yeah.
And that's how you retain, because now you can move and adapt with the times.
Okay.
You know?
So it's when that changes, because you're working with a lot, right? So I guess we should define how you work. You have people you work with online, then you have people that you work with in person.
Yeah.
Right. But the do I want to use the word, the base template of your philosophy, which we'll get into here in a minute, your training philosophy, is still going to kind of be the same, but it's going to have to, you know, be molded with each person, because you can't have like different philosophies for every single person. You wouldn't grow doing that either. So how, I guess before I ask this question, what is that base philosophy? If I was to say, what is your base training philosophy at this point?
At this point is really, the people that I have now is like longevity. Like, how well are they going to be able to sustain throughout their career, and then what are they going to do after that career? So I have to work on getting them to be better movers, getting them to feel better, recover better, understand how to take care of their bodies in and out of the gym. And then from there, it's like a holistic approach where I can dictate not only their training, but also their recovery. And that's the big thing. With any coach, you should be able to do that. You know, so my philosophy is longevity in a lot of ways. And how do I do that? Well, we give them what they need, right? We find out exactly from an assessment standpoint, from a, you know, when I have my consultations with them, I'm actually finding out discrepancies, compensation patterns, all of that comes into play. That's the X's and O's. Then I go, well, what's going to be the lowest hanging fruit that we can get off of right now, right? And then from there, it's like funneling in all these different demands of training, funneling in these methods of training that is going to give them the best result, not just for the short term, but for the long term. And that's how we build long-term value. That's how we build success.
So what are the metrics that you would use, right? So as a business, you got certain metrics to be able to grow the business. And with your athletes, you have certain metrics to measure, are they moving closer or further away from their goal?
Yeah, it depends on the person. Like their limitations are going to be based upon that. So if they have like, let's say they're limited by their conditioning, right? We're going to do something where we get to see exactly, like we can run a standard VO2 max test, a lactate threshold test, all of that. That's going to give us an understanding of where they're at. But if I want to see exactly what's going on, what their limitations are from a bioenergetic demand standpoint, I'll pop on what we call a NIRS device, which is we use a MOXIE, whereas like it's near infrared spectroscopy, which is basically near infrared light that you can put on the muscle itself. And as they go to test, like let's say we throw them on an assault bike, we can do a 2-minute ramp up test, and I can see exactly through blood flow trends throughout the monitors in real time on if they are utilizing oxygen appropriately, are they delivering that oxygen appropriately, and how is their respiratory rate limiting that factor. So now, okay, their limitations, maybe they're a high power guy, they're very good at utilizing oxygen, but they can't deliver it, right? So now they're taking money out the bank, but they can't put it back in, right? So now they're going bankrupt. And then you got the guys that are very methodical, maybe come from more of an endurance-based sport. They can deliver oxygen, but they're not as efficient in utilizing it. So now we need to get them stronger. We need to get more muscle activation going. We need to get them in the weight room. Where the guys that come, like, you know, I got guys like Tyron Woodley or somebody that's highly powerful, we want to give them the ability to close that gap of their limitations. And we do that depending on where they're at in camp too as well. So if they're off camp, we're going to work on their limitations. We're going to fill those gaps. When they're in camp, I still want to work on their compensators because that's their game plan. So we got to improve on the things that they're great at too as well, just because we know that that's what they're going to fall back to. So we just improve on their ability to repeat power over time.
What other items would be, let's say you just bring them on, right? So it's an intake form, you know, assessment that maybe a week or whatever it's going to take for everything.
It takes about a week and a half, 2 weeks.
What other items are on that?
I like to do a velocity-based training test just to see how well they're moving certain bar speeds and doing things in that fashion.
What do you use for that?
We use a GymAware and a Flex device.
Okay.
So a velocity-based trainer, kind of like a Tendo, right? And it's a linear transducer, so it'll show us max velocity and max power output. It'll also show us mean velocity too as well.
Yes.
But what I'm doing there is I'm actually seeing, I can dictate the 1RMs based on what other velocities that they're producing at whatever weight. So instead of putting them through a 1-rep max test, I can go to 3.0 meters per second, shut it down, and then I can dictate where their 1RM is. Then I can structure out the percentages from there.
Okay. Yeah. What other assessments?
We do a reactive strength index. We'll do a...
What is that?
So basically I'm trying to see if they're more powerful than they are strong.
Yes.
Right? And you can use a jump map for that. We also like to use a force plate to see how well they're producing force from a static position, whether that be a mid-thigh pull or something along the lines of that. Just for triple extension, we found that that has high correlation. The UFCPI does that too as well. And that you can use a force plate, you could use a crane scale if you don't have the money to do that. And I also I like to look at body metrics, so we'll use a DEXA scan or we'll use a bod pod or something along the lines of that, just to see where they're at body fat percentage wise. And then also I like to see their bone density, their bone mineral density. Usually fighters, football players, they have the highest bone density out of every athlete because they're constantly hitting their bodies, right? And then also the strength training helps that too as well. But if they have low bone density, that also gives me the understanding of what I need to put in their diet, you know, and also how susceptible they are to injury.
Yes.
So that's going to dictate the training. That's going to dictate the diet. That's going to, with the DEXA scan, also shows us body fat percentage. That's also going to dictate their diet for that too as well. Because it's all about, all right, we got to make sure that also you can step on the scale and make the weight after the 8 weeks. So that's also inside of everything. Luckily now I have a weight cut specialist, a nutritionist on hand. I used to have to do that on my own.
Yes.
But now I have those people that I can just relay over to and be like, all right, this is what we have, you know. But those are some of the metrics that we use. Standard box jump would be an easy one to do. Broad jump is an easy one to do. We do a lateral version, a bilateral version, a unilateral version too as well, going forward and sideways.
Yes. Right?
Usually with the fighters, they have higher levels of lateral force displacement than they do going linear, which makes sense because we're always in that lateral force, you know, in that pretty much that frontal plane motion.
All right. So now if it's not a fighter, they're running through those same intake metrics, mm-hmm. right? I would assume.
Yeah, this is after I sit them down for 90 minutes and go through a full-on interview with them.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to figure out personalities too as well.
Well, through that full-on interview, are there people that you just won't work with because of things that you'll pick up through that?
Yeah, exactly. I've turned people down, turned people away, or I've given people to other coaches that I knew that would be a better fit for them.
Yes.
You know.
And for you personally, what are some of the red flags?
Really, it's just they have to have a higher purpose in my mind, right? They have to have a level of understanding of who they are and why they're here, as opposed to just being like, I don't know, I just think fighting is cool.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to be the tough guy, because it's not sustainable, and I'm looking for sustainability. So if I know that it's not going to happen from the start, they won't even be a part of the gym. They won't be a part of Daru Strong at all, mm-hmm. right? If they are highly driven, they don't even have to be the best athlete. I don't even want them to be the best athlete, because I'll make them a better athlete. But they just have to have the ability, they have to have that dog in them. They got to love to fight, and they have to know what it takes to get there. And they have to have the vision, and they have to love the process in that time. They don't necessarily have to know exactly what they want, but they need to be able to understand that they need to put the effort in to do so. Because I can guide them as much as possible. And as we go through the years of us training, they'll figure it out, especially if they're young guys. Nowadays, I have more of the elite veterans. So they're different than the 20-year-olds, right? If you're 30s, 40s even, you know, everything changes. You know, now it's like, all right, I wanna stamp my legacy in the sport. I want to be able to do things outside of the sport. I want to, you know, put together businesses. I want to do non-for-profits. There's a lot of things that go outside of that I help them out with too as well. Content production, things on that side where I can, you know, guide them in the right direction and let them leverage what they've gained over their entire career.
Okay, let's go down some of those rabbit holes after we take a bathroom break real quick, and we'll be back. I got to piss like a racehorse. All right, so where I wanted to go is we were kind of with the training philosophy. You're talking about the different athletes and how some of them you're working with, and now it's more about longevity.
Yeah.
And you're helping mentor more just in the training, more than just the training sense. Mm-hmm. Before we get into that, I want to back up a little bit and talk about, as I was going through some of your content the other day, trying to pick up where your global training philosophy is.
Gotcha.
The condensed conjugate came up a few times. Do you still kind of work from that?
I started that. It's funny because I saw a.
Well, you definitely framed it.
Yeah,
you know?
I started. What the thing was, like, I was gonna call it like compressed conjugate, but I was like, that sounds like depressed, and I was like, I don't really want to do that.
You still work from that model, though.
I
so
do.
What is that?
So basically, it's taking either, from the 4-day-a-week split down to a 2 or 3-day-a-week split. That's all it really is, and we're condensing it. We're doing dynamic effort and max effort, but we're breaking it up into sides of the body. So upper body dynamic effort, lower body max effort, or heavy efforts, and then we would go 72 hours later. If it's a 2-day split, we just switch it.
And there's just two training days per week
for MMA guys.
Yes, for the MMA guys.
Primarily, that's all they can handle.
Yes.
Now the 3-day-a-week split would be good for my boxers, my judokas, any other sport athletes that are in season too as well. We could do a 3-day-a-week split if they have the ability from a scheduling standpoint to do so. And it's always about how well they can recover from those.
What would the 3-day look like?
So the 3 days are a little different. So 3 days is going to be max effort 1 and 2, and then the third day is a full body dynamic day. And that's going to be primarily on a Saturday.
Okay.
So it'll be a Monday, Wednesday, Saturday.
All right, so I'm assuming, but just for the listeners, the dynamic isn't just the bench or the squat. You're putting in dynamic.
That's what changes it a lot, right? So we work a lot with landmines.
Yes.
Right, we'll do a lot of rotational component stuff. We'll do a lot of med ball throwing, ballistic style training, a lot of plyometrics. And then I'll go and I'll do our speed work with bands and chains and things of that nature. Usually I'll stick with either 4 to 5 dynamic effort exercises and then just recycle those.
How long will each one stay in?
3 weeks.
So 3 weeks. So still the same 3-week wave.
Yeah, it's a 3-week wave.
Yes.
Still the same thing. Everything's it's all similar to that degree. As far as like if we were going through a camp perspective, like I start them off on triphasic. So if we have a 12 weeks, or if we have an off camp, we'll go triphasic 2, 2, 2, and that'll lead in or bleed into condensed conjugate on the 8 weeks out. So now at 8 weeks out, now we're working on either maximal effort or heavy efforts on their maximal effort day or their heavy day or their strength day. And if they're 3 days, 3 days a week, then I could start them off almost like a 1 or 5-3-1 type of deal, where on the first week of that 8 weeks, they'll do sets of 5, and we'll work up to a heavy set of 5. Then from there, we'll go to a heavy set of 3 the next week, then a single, right? Then I'll back them off, I'll deload them. That gets into the second phase of the training, which is more of a peak. Then I'm going into contrast work with that. So I'll either do French contrast or I'll do some potentiation clusters going into the fight itself, because now the speed of the sport is really important.
Yes, so for the max effort day, would your ISOs fall on that day?
It can, yeah.
Or would
it's all dependent upon
is it the max effort exercise though, or is it would that isometric movement be the max effort thing?
Exactly, because max force, right? So if I have a guy that I know that isn't quote unquote qualified to be in the weight room like that, right? Doesn't have the intermuscular coordination to produce that amount of force with that amount of load, right? And just shit goes crazy, I'll give them the best opportunity to get the adaptation. So I'll do an overcoming isometric and max force production at a mini max and let them go after it. Plus, it reduces the risk of injury. They're getting close to the fight, so I have to make sure that we don't mess them up on that front. Then I can take that, let's say they do those maximal effort isometrics, overcoming isometrics, I can transition that into the contrast work too as well. So instead of going 85, 90, 95, 100%, I can have them go all out on an isometric, take them off of that, go right into a dynamic movement so that we can get that potentiation and explosive power built in. And we will do that, roughly around 4 weeks out.
Now, how will this change based upon where they fall on that strength speed index?
Mm-hmm. So if a guy's stronger than they are fast, like I would say an example for you, you're more powerful than you are strong, from what I've remembered.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? So our goal would be to, let's get him more in those isometric, those maximal isometrics, or we'll go over, or we can go strength speed with a large amount of band tension at the top, or at a mini max, wherever we want to go with it. And I can dictate wherever I feel is necessary. One, that correlates over to their game plan, or two, just where they're weakest at, so that I can just make sure that we're filling the gaps. The goal for us as a fighter is like to always be strong in any position at any point in the fight. So it doesn't matter what it is. It's not about the exercise, it's about the method of it, and it's also about making sure that you get the intent down.
Yeah, so that brings me to the next thing, which would be the end range conditioning training. So how do you incorporate that in?
So if I have the time with them, I would have them do, usually it's concurrent. So because we don't have a large amount of time.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is the conditioning is going to be dictated on what they're doing inside the weight room. So the time frames are the same, right? So we don't throw an organism in two different directions, right? So we're not going aerobic work, or we're not going, cardiac output stuff and then doing maximal effort stuff. What we want to do is we want to create an occlusion trend. So like I'm still trying to maximize utilization training at the end point of our condensed conjugate work. So let's say, for instance, you go through a day 1, 8 weeks out, they went through heavy efforts or max effort or isometrics, and they did their dynamic effort. Whatever we do on the maximal effort side, whether it's lower or upper, that's going to be dictated on the accessories, the supplemental, and then whatever we're doing for cardio. So the dynamic work is just dynamic work for the upper body or just dynamic work for the lower body. Everything else I leave the same. I leave out.
Yeah, got it.
So because really I just want to work fast to slow. And then from there I want to work on repeated efforts. So if I'm doing conditioning in a concurrent model, I want to make sure that I'm going repeated efforts, explosive power work, but repeated for time, because that's the fight game. It's repeated efforts for a longer duration and how well you can produce power and force for that long duration of time.
All right, so when I think, what was it, because as I go through, the names of things change over a period of time. Functional range conditioning, right? So
that's mobility.
That's the mobility.
Yeah,
so where's that fitting in there?
That fits in either on the off days, right, to enhance movement quality, or we can throw that in, and I actually did it today, we can throw that in on the dynamic warm-up. So just doing simple controlled articular rotations, just flossing out the joint capsule. That was one of the things when we talked about, like, learning more and getting more in depth on, being able to understand what my athletes actually need. I found that out to be the limiting factor out of everything. It was an overarching issue. Whereas like they couldn't get in certain positions because they were so used to being in fixed positions all the time. So in order for me, and I talked about this with Joe on his podcast, and I said at that point in time where I was working with Frankie Edgar, I was like, man, he's fast, he's strong, he's conditioned, but his mobility shit. So his energy output is limited based on his mobility, because he's getting occlusion, he's not able to go in full ranges, so then he's struggling, he's straining, and that could negatively affect your efforts. That could negatively affect the energy output. So increasing range of motion, not only was it reducing the risk of injury, it was increasing performance as a whole. And then from there, they're able to get into positions and get stronger in those positions. So if we increase mobility, we increase range of motion, we can get them in fixed positions or in other positions to get them stronger in. And because we're in MMA or any fight sport or any sport in general, we want to be strong in any position so that, one, we reduce the risk of that injury happening, and two, we can be powerful, produce force, so on and so forth.
Now, how are you measuring this range of motion?
Honestly, you can use a gynomometer, you can use things to like measure.
But are you, as a coach, are you just eyeballing it?
I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I go by feel. Like, I go by how they're feeling inside of their training and how they're looking when they actually go through the motion.
Got it.
So like, you can do a standard like FMS or something like that, but I do what's like a functional range assessment. So like, I'll take them back through those controlled articular rotations, and if I see limited compensation, then we're on the right track. If they feel like they can flow through different movements better without sticking points and without having to speed through a motion, that's an increase. That's a progression.
Okay, that's the point that I want you to articulate, right? Because a lot of these things, you have the original metrics that you're going to measure, then you'll come back and you may hit those in the off season, preseason, wherever you have the markers for that. But then every day you're working with the athlete, you're looking at those metrics. Right. So you're looking at the force, like what's it look like, right? And this is where the experience part comes in.
It does. Yeah.
And
because it's hard to dictate, like, you have to develop the coach's eye.
Yes.
Right. So like, for the most part, with new coaches, I say throw them on a VBT monitor and keep that rolling every 6 weeks, so that you can see exactly how well we're producing force, high velocities with that certain amount of weight that's on the bar. That can be good for guys that need to develop their coach's eye, right? I remember Louis saying that he didn't even need anything after that. Like, he knew exactly what type of band tension you needed, what, everything. And that's the same with me. Like, I can hear how fast the bar's moving from across the gym and know that you need to take the weight off, you need to put some more on. Yeah,
so if you're mentoring coaches or you're coaching coaches, which is kind of where you're at now, how do you teach that?
So I tell them, use the metrics that you have. Use the technology. Honestly, use the technology. Understand the athlete. Do it yourself too as well, because you got to feel it. Yeah. Right. And then you can start to develop, like, as you go through your experiences and you're seeing so many guys run through it and girls run through that particular motion, you can be like, yeah, that needs to go up, that needs to go down. And then you use the numbers based upon percentages and based upon your velocities. You can see, all right, if I throw on 10 more pounds, this is the velocity that we're going to get. If I take off 5 more pounds, this is the velocity that we're going to get. I know that by experience. It just takes time. Yeah.
So it's by using the testing and watching and paying attention. You'll find the correlation.
For sure. And you got to want to pay attention. And again, you got to track the metrics. It's like if you don't if you don't measure it, or you know what I'm saying, it's hard to measure it when you don't have those metrics.
Yes. Now, breathing's another thing that came up in some of the conversations that you were having. The nasal breathing, some of the other breathing as far as the conditioning goes.
That was another big issue. So we talked about, like, what I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to be efficient with breathing, because I found that there was a respiratory issue going on when we tested the limitations. So as a respiratory limitation, that's usually a biomechanical issue, or that's a postural issue. And that makes sense because they're highly kyphotic. A lot of these guys are always drawn forward. Even every athlete has an anterior pelvic tilt for the most. They have that. So we have to develop a better postural alignment and be able to breathe through the diaphragm effectively. One that's going to bring down the stress level, that's going to bring down, bring you to a parasympathetic state. But on top of that, your mouth is closed. Your jaw is not open, not loose. So now less chance of getting knocked out. I know that sounds crazy, but it does work. Close your mouth, breathe in through your nose. It calms down the body. And the major issue that we have with a lot of fighters, they can be in the greatest condition possible. They can be in the sparring room, they could be in their training room killing guys. They get out in the fight and they're around fans and the lights are on and the TVs are rolling and they shit the bed and they gas out because of anxiety. So they have to learn how to bring it back to their breath. Focus on the breath, focus on the task as opposed to the outside distraction. And that's another thing that I use from a meditative standpoint, breathing mechanics and just focusing on nasal breathing, because that's the more functional way to breathe. Right? On top of that, we want to breathe in and blow out as much CO2 as possible. If that gets trapped in there, you know the negative byproducts. If I get that, acidity is going to build up and then I'm for shit at that point.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
So how are you cueing this for them?
So a lot of times, a lot of my guys have deviated septums. So they can't really, you know what I mean? So they can't really breathe through that. So there's things that I'll do to have them the ability, or give them the ability to cope with air hunger. So we'll do maximal breath holds, and we'll do that for time, or we'll do that for paces. So in the beginning of training, we'll go normal breath in, normal breath out. I got this one from Oxygen Advantage, and I read their whole book, and then I took their course. Right, Patrick McEwen is the guy that took the course. He got this from the Buteyko method, and Buteyko was, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was a clinician that helped heal, per se, I guess they said, I'm paraphrasing, asthma patients, like 60 different asthma patients, by just doing these nasal breathing practices and breath hold practices. So I started doing it with the fighters, and I looked at certain studies, and I found that you can increase VO2 max by a standard amount of time. 90 minutes is like the cutoff point, by about 5 to 10%, which is a huge percentage of VO2 max. It's very hard to increase your VO2 max. And this was done with high-level sprinters. And what they did was they would have them nasal breathe and maximally run at a sprinting pace as they're holding their breath throughout the sprint, right? And then they would repeat that over for a sustainable amount of time. What I decided to do, and I took this from Patrick, was a normal breath in, normal breath out, hold the nose, close the airway, and walk for paces. A normal pace that you want to have generally is around 60 paces, somewhere around there. That's a good starting point. When I started with some of the guys, they could barely get past like 20 paces. So that means to me that they can't cope with air hunger. They can't cope with that CO2 buildup. Now, through time, they were able psychologically, physiologically, to cope after we did this for weeks on end. And you could see the progressions. It was like constant and instant, where like the next week was like you know, it went from 20 steps to 25 to 30 to 38 to 40. I had one of my UFC guys get from 60, and I had to stop him. I had to shut him down at 160 paces, because at that point, it's like a diminishing return. Yeah. Now you're coping with CO2 too much, and now you don't feel the need to breathe, which is not good. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, there's a diminishing return there, but we want to get them in that 60 to 80 paces range. And then from there, that teaches them how to breathe effectively, catch their breath after they are short of breath. And then again, you're building up that ability to cope with not having enough air.
When going back to what we were talking about before we took the break, is helping them with building next phases, you know, after they're done. How do they come to you, or do you have to bring that up? How does that conversation begin?
As
far as leveraging their fighting ability.
Oh, okay. So taking it into more of a
business or whatever it's going to be.
So I look at where their credibility is. I look at their notoriety. I'm looking at how well they've done in the sport. I'm looking at their skill set. I'm looking at their ability to articulate words. And usually, if you're at a high level, you're articulate, you're witty, you've been doing this for a while. You've been interviewed a lot, you know, so you know how to, you know, coordinate your words appropriately. And so that's going to help you be good on camera. So then I look at that and I go, well, here, why don't we do a tutorial video on you showing a certain exercise? What's his name? Wonder Boy Thompson does it really well. He's a YouTuber now. Like, I don't like to say that, but he is. He's a content creator, and he's able to articulate his words appropriately because he's doing the things that he's always done his entire life. So it's very simple, easy to do when you're an expert in it, when you're a master at the craft. So now there's no but, and there's no freezing points when you're talking to the camera, because you're acting as if you're teaching somebody your moves that you've been doing for 20 years. So I look at that and then I go, well, how can we leverage what you have here? Because you're an elite UFC fighter that has that on their resume. Anything that you do from here on out, even if you fought twice in the promotion, you're still a UFC veteran. They label you as such. Then I look at personalities, like, are they introverted? Are they extroverted? Do they have extroverted tendencies? Can they get out into a crowd and turn it on? Because some of those guys do. A lot of them are introverted at heart. And me too. And I'm pretty sure you have that same way. Like, I can be by myself, but I can turn it on when I'm in a crowd. I can speak to you one-on-one very comfortably, but I can also speak to hundreds. You see what I'm saying? Or thousands even. And you got to have that understanding. You got to know who you are. I use the Big Five model to understand that. So I take them through that personality trait test.
What is that?
So it's 5 different personality traits, and I got this one from Jordan Peterson, but it's a psychological, it's a clinical psychologist way of understanding people primarily. It's conscientiousness, openness, awareness, extroversion, and neuroticism. These 5 traits usually everybody has, and some of them are hybrid. You know, you're going to have extrovert, introverted tendencies, and so on and so forth. But when you look at it from a business standpoint, we talked about us being visionaries. As a visionary, as an entrepreneur, you're very open to new ideas. You're very open as an individual. You like to meet new people. You like to set new goals. You have several different visions going on, as you can see from my life.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then you have the person that is very conscientious, which is like they like things organized. They like things appropriately scheduled. So those are like your military guys, right? Those are the guys that, or girls, that like to have a schedule, like to know what they're doing, and have everything on point. Those are your operators. So if you had a business and you had a partner and you're the visionary, you need to have some type of operating mentality, you know, by you, so that the business can run smoothly. Because somebody has to pull your ass back and be like, nah, that ain't a part of what we're trying to do here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and my wife does that very well. You know, she's like, I don't know. Should probably hold off on that right now.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, I'm just like, I want to do everything. So those are the people that are conscientious, and those are usually, for the most part, we have some fighters that are like that. You know, the fighters, and you can draw a factor analysis from like Big Five to the Braverman's test, and then I can find that correlation, and I'll talk about the Bravermans in a minute, but like that correlation there of how do I need to coach them, what type of personality do they have, what's going to be their career outside of fighting based on their personality traits, and go from there. Now, the one thing that we don't want to see from a fighting standpoint, or any standpoint from an athletic perspective, is We don't want to have an individual that's highly neurotic, that's very emotional. Because if they get too emotional, if they get too neurotic, they can't withstand or they can't overcome the anxiety, right? So those are the fighters that shit the bed when they get in the ring or get in the cage or whatever, or get on the basketball court or whatever the case may be. We want to negate that as much as possible by giving them confidence, right? Giving them little wins throughout the entire season or camp or whatever the case, throughout that process of training, so that we can increase their confidence, we can increase their level of security, so that they know and they're ready to do work when the time comes.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was fighting, Dean used to put us in a situation where we would have to cope with this, what we were going to have to cope with inside of the fight. So every Saturday the week before the fight, he would call everybody that joined the gym. He would shut the gym down, and then he would make it as if it was a fight. So we would have our walkout music, we'd have people booing us or cheering us on, and then we'd have a referee, we'd have our lights, the lights would be down, and he would put us in that position of having to cope with all these other stresses. So now we're in it before we're in it, right? So I always thought that was something very positive for somebody to do, especially if they're very emotional, if they're very neurotic. And if you can do that and they can cope with that, then you can switch them out of that personality trait and get them more into awareness and get them more open to new opportunities. Because you gotta want to be successful. You gotta want to be the best. Like you said, I want to win. So like everything that you do from that perspective, your personality, the way you perform, the way you progress, the way you attack the days is based upon me wanting to be a winner. It's not about you not wanting to lose, because we have that too as well. There's two different sides of that. And I see fighters that go into fights and they go in there not wanting to lose instead of winning. So they don't attack the situation. Like they're not after it to win. They just don't want to look bad. So we have to take that out of that mentality. And so, finding those things out. I forgot where the fuck I was at, but
No, but it's interesting to me because it's, the 5 things, the way I was kind of introduced to the 5 things is going like back to Tony Robbins, right? Which is significance, certainty, uncertainty, growth, and love, right? Which can basically be those same things just reframed with different words.
Absolutely.
Right? To where if you can find somebody's motivated by certainty, then they're probably not going to do real well is an entrepreneur, right? Or say customer service, right? Certainty is not going to work really well in customer service. That's uncertainty, right? Somebody there is going to be driven by uncertainty.
And they have to be very agreeable. Right. So if you have somebody that works for you that does customer service, they have to be a very agreeable person. But at the same time, you don't want them to be a salesperson.
Yes, that's a different personality. That's a different type of person, where the neuroticism is kind of how I would have framed significance, right? Where they're motivated mostly by significance. Right. So, but that person would have to be somebody that needs complimented more. You can't bust their balls as hard. It's the opposite of that. Which is, it's interesting how the different, and I'm sure there's other methodologies that fall all within that same spectrum, but I think the important thing is to understand people are motivated by different tendencies and their different skill sets. And you try to, not that you can't develop one or that it can change over time. You can go from somebody that's completely motivated by uncertainty to certainty with the birth of a child real fucking fast.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? So it changes, and it changes the way people see those things.
And you're drawing parallels at this point. So like I talked about the Braverman's test, and that's just measuring neurotransmitter dominance, right? And that could be dopamine dominant, acetylcholine dominant, GABA dominant, serotonin dominant. And I got introduced to this by Charles Poliquin, and he was talking about this Braverman's test. And I was like, man, this is something that could be good to give to the fighters. It's like a 60 questionnaire, and there's a lot of in-depth questions in there. So I'll give them that while we do our assessment. That was something that I would go with to start off. As they're answering the questions, I'm asking them little questions here and there, not to confuse them for what they're doing. But at that time, I'm actually seeing like how they react to certain questions, like that, or like, or like that, or like. little things like that shows me who they are.
Yes.
So as a dopamine-driven individual, it's A-type dominant, like I want to get after it. And those are those people that could be conscientious. They could be ones that are very extroverted. And then you have somebody who's GABA dominant that is very male-mannered, likes to be around a lot of people, likes to be in a team atmosphere. And I ran some tests on certain athletes, and like mainly baseball players are more GABA dominant. They like to be in that team atmosphere. They're very long-term orientated, so like it makes sense because baseball games and seasons are so fucking long, where like fighters are like just go, right? There's a mix between acetylcholine and dopamine, where acetylcholine, the dominance there is like more analytical. I want to know exactly what I need to do. That falls along the lines of conscientiousness, where dopamine can be an open person that just wants to get after it. And then you can find out exactly who you want to pair them with inside their group training if you are doing groups, and you can also figure out how you want to coach them too as well. Because if they're dopamine dominant, it's really like they really don't want to know what this is. Just show me what I got to do, and I'm going to go do it.
Yeah.
And go all out.
How's this all accounted for if you have groups?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So there was a time when I was at Top Team where like I would have 8 or 9 guys and girls, all at different weight classes, fighting at different times, different strength levels, different backgrounds, different times of their career, different age ranges, everything that you could think of. But the one thing that never changed was the skeleton. So I had that skeleton of condensed conjugate. If they were in camp and if they were off camp, they would run triphasic. And so I would group them up if they were off camp or in camp. And it got better over time. Like I would switch out hours, like off camp guys come in this time, in camp guys. But the problem was that everybody was training at the same time during classes, and then you would have individual sessions going on. So my time of training would get ran over, right? Because I'm an after effect at that point, right? Strength and conditioning is like the last thing you need to do. So I had to get, at one point, like I said, everybody structured, so where I knew exactly what exercises they needed to do, what modalities that they were going to train, but the methods may remain the same based upon their schedule, based upon the situation where they're at inside their camp or off camp. So like if, let's say for instance, one person would be over here doing a split squat, the other person would be over here doing a box squat, but they may be doing the same method. And then as far as accessory goes, now just based off of their limitations, right?
Yes.
Based off their weaknesses. And I'll look at that off their main lift, like we always do. So main lift, the main lift will dictate the supplemental will dictate everything else.
All right, so now let's take, say, said celebrity, then throw him. How's that work?
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
So,
but you still have to kind of bend it around the same philosophies, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, it's like do no harm. The major key thing, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, I'm looking at it from a holistic approach. Like I first want to know how well they're able to move, right? So with Timberland, like, for the first year, he was on the ground. I had him moving on the ground because his posture was so messed up. He got shot when he was a kid at 19, and he got shot through his face and it went through his collarbone, and so he has nerve damage all the way down his left side. So if you see, he has a collapsed arch, externally rotated, and then he really can't fire up his glute as efficiently as he could on the other side. So now there's a discrepancy, there's a definite asymmetry. On top of that, he has tight hips, he has a posterior pelvic tilt, and he's kyphotic. So that was all the things that I was like, first of all, you're not running, you can barely walk. So let's get you on the floor first. Let's start from the basics. Similar like PRI stuff for posture restoration, or, doing a lot of like Stu McGill stuff, and I learned a lot from Stu, and I learned a lot from Duffin on that perspective of like breathing and bracing and intra-abdominal pressurization and all of that. Then also with the FRC, I combined it all. Right, and then I did a little bit of PRI to make sure that breathing mechanics were down and we're stacking the rib cage over the pelvis, making sure that everything's working properly. In time, 6 months later, now we're getting him off the ground. Now he's moving. Now he's doing, gait mechanics, and I'm just teaching him how to walk and, basically march in place in the right ways to distribute his weight appropriately and get his balance down. That took another year. So we're going on 2 years now, 2.5, and now I'm finally able to put him in positions to where he can go higher dynamics and he can do a little bit more strength work and he can do more conditioning on that higher end. Where before, like, I couldn't even imagine him doing a burpee or some shit like that. Right now, you know, he can do sit-outs and he can do mountain climbers and he can do push-ups and Hindu push-ups and all of that, where it's not going to hurt him for one, and two, it looks good. If it don't look good, I'm not going to do it. Right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it took a while, and then from there we built a rapport, because he knew that I wasn't some guy just trying to run him through a workout. He knew that I was actually trying to help him from the inside out. Then on top of that, you take it to the next level. Like, what are you eating? How are you sleeping? Are you getting your massages? Are you know, he has everything at his disposal. So I could throw the kitchen sink. Like, I talk to, like, I'm close with his chef, right? I say, I want him to eat this, this, and this, and I want those macros to be on point. He's like, all right, I got it. So he does it for me. All he has to do is do the work, and he's used to that. That's fine. He can do that, because remember, he's a record producer.
Yeah.
So like, he's actually used to calling the shots from a producing standpoint. When he has to take a step back, it's almost like an athlete or like a coach taking a step back as being an athlete. So now he likes that fact of, oh, I don't have to think. You could just tell me what to do and I'll do it. All right, perfect. So it's been good, and like now we're transitioning where like we want to help other people, right? Because he's had a long list of issues, not only injuries, but you know, he's had issues with drugs and things of that nature. He had substance abuse issues where he was taking pain medication and all this other stuff to cope with a lot of stress and a lot of issues that he had in his past, and obviously the rock star lifestyle, everything else.
Yeah.
So he's like, what if we did? And I had this idea where I was like, your story can resonate with a lot of people, and we can market it to those people that actually need this work, not just from a fat burning perspective or just like a weight loss goal. It's like total human optimization. Like, we want to take care of everything. Mindfulness practices, you know, making sure that you're breathing appropriately, making sure that your posture is aligned, making sure that you're getting proper mobility, your gait mechanics are on point, your sleep quality is good, your nutrition is on point. All these things come into play. And then on top of that, what gives us the most stress is not having the amount of money. This was stressed me my entire life. So like, financial understanding, right? Having that financial literacy built in. So we're using that too to help catapult and help people from a full spectrum. Like I said, it's a holistic approach.
Yes. Yeah. So how, when you talk about that financial approach, that's through the program that you put out?
Yeah.
And in that, is it, go into that more?
So primarily it's going to be about understanding your financials, right? Making sure that you know how to budget, making sure that you know how to organize your portfolio, whether you are working on investments, or you're a businessman, you're an entrepreneur, and you need to learn how to organize your plan, right? So with that, we'll bring in some guys that are more financial advisors. I'm obviously not that, right? I'm not fiduciary, none of that shit, so don't take my word. But what I do know is that when I was younger, I had a budget, right? I still have the budget. I got kids, I have a wife, I have businesses all over the place, so I know I'm very good with money. That is one thing. And I'm very good at making money. So with those two things, you have to learn how to play defense and you have to learn how to play your offense. With the offense is making the money, with the defense is budgeting out what you need, making sure your percentages are on point and your gross profit margins are where they need to be. So like, learning that, going into deep detail. Now we can go as deep as we want based upon, you know, who we have and the individuals I put in place to help them. That's another aspect of the actual program. As of right now, though, however, we're just working on getting their fitness in order, because we know if we get them moving, their mentality is going to change. And every time we go into exercise or a workout, creativity starts to increase, right? Endorphins are rushing, you get that dopamine rush, and now, oh shit, I knew what I needed to do here. Oh, I got this plan for this, you know. And so for him, he's like, this is something that I need. And this is something that everybody needs in order to level up their life. But if you don't do that, if you're not moving appropriately, like if you're not moving at all, that's an issue, right? You have to get up and move. It's just, your brain functions better, right? Your energies are more aware, like you know where you're at. And then from there, things start popping into place and you're like, oh, I remember I had this idea, or, you know, you forgetting something and now it popped into your memory bank, and now you can go into whatever you're trying to do and attack it. And that's the goal. It's like, every time I do a seminar, I'm up shadowboxing before I go on. You know, I'm trying to move my body so that I can be in a flow state and I can keep things rolling and articulate the things that I need to articulate so I can help people. Yes. But it starts with getting in motion.
So you said 4 kids?
I got 3.
3.
Yeah,
right.
I got 3 kids, and then I got Kids I take care of at the gym.
Yeah, okay. So with staying on this topic, while I don't know if the word balance is the right word, you're doing multiple things again, all at the same time. Yeah. How do you manage all of that?
Well, now I have a team.
Yes.
So that's the greatest thing, is like the one thing I've been able to do and understanding through my past experiences is I can't do it alone. And you have to develop a solid team, and that's always going to be something that you change and direct and navigate through and adapt to. And for me, it's like, it's never going to be perfect, but I need it to be optimal, right? I need it to be right on point so that I can do what I need to do, what I can focus on when I need to focus on, and I don't have to worry about those other things, because I was trying to micromanage everything that was in my world. Now I can delegate. I can give them autonomy and let them handle the things that they need to handle on a smaller scale. I'll take care of the big shit. You take care of the small stuff, take care of the logistics. And then for me, I'll make sure that we get the big deals done. I'll make sure that the fighters are on point. I'll make sure that, the programming is set to where I need it. And I can coach you guys on actually taking this over so that I can worry about acquiring this new talent, or acquiring these new sponsorships, and so on and so forth.
It's easier said than done.
Yeah,
right. So,
absolutely.
What were some of the pitfalls you ran into trying to put that together?
It's just finding the talent, and trying to vet people out, and really, being a good judge of character. There's a lot of times you don't have that, and for me, I don't think, and I was just talking about this with them, is like, my wife's a way better judge of character than me. I kind of give everybody the benefit of the doubt for the most part, and that's a problem.
So you going off character or skills?
Both. I mean, they could be highly skillful and be an asshole. Yeah. Then you're like, well, we got to weigh this out. Do I want to be around this motherfucker, or do we need to get the job done? They could be shit, have shit skill, but I could teach them, and they're a good person and they're loyal. I could work with that. Yeah. I'd rather have that than. That's where I was asking. That's where I pull out my hair all the time. Yeah. But at the same time, I know, like, this person's loyal. Yeah. So I know that they're never gonna do me wrong. It's just I gotta keep teaching them. Yeah. I gotta keep leading. And that's it. You got to find, again, a good operator to manage the situation, and you got to lead by example by going out there doing this stuff that I'm doing here. They all see that. When I leave, they know what I'm doing is for them. It's for everybody. It's not for just me, right? Because if I grow, the entire business grows. Yes.
Now, are these things that, say, if you're speaking with Timberland, he's giving you advice on? Absolutely. So what are some of the things that he's told you that made a huge difference? Yeah, same thing. So he's had to go through the same issues, the same situations. And it's funny because he'll get this look on his face. He'll be like, you go through the same shit I go through. Yeah. He'll be like, you're right. So I go, so if he's going through it, then I feel okay, because he's 50 years old and he's been through a lot. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he just literally tells me to, like, be patient. A lot of the times it's like, be patient, it's gonna come. You won't make your he said you. It's funny. So I look at him as a mentor. I look at you as a mentor. I look at Louis as a mentor. And with him, he said that, his mentor, he told him basically, he was going through these issues, and he was like I think he was like 35, 40 years old, and he was big time. Justin Timberlake stuff was coming out and everything, and Jimmy Iovine, who was his mentor, said, man, you just got to stay the course. Stay the course, keep doing what you're doing, keep progressing, because you won't make your real money until you're 50. And lo and behold, he made his real money when he was 50. So I was like, all right, I think that being able to be persistent but patient is the main thing. Yeah. And they're two closely correlated issues. Well, again, that's easier said than done. Yeah. Right? Of course. Yes. So it's what are other things that he's pointed out, right? Because if you've been together for 2 years, I think it's paying attention to more detail. Like, he's very detail oriented. He'll come in the gym and be like, yo, that ain't right. I don't like that. Or he'll be like, you gotta clean that up, man. You gotta do something about that. And I'll be like, yeah, you're right. It'd be little things. Little tiny shit. And then I found out that I become more anal with that because I'm paying more attention. And now everything is spotless. He came in the gym the other day, he's like, you got it. That looks perfect. So he gives me the opportunity to be better based off of just him being aware of things that I'm not aware of at times because of just wisdom and knowledge and experience. Yeah. We'll sit and have conversations for like an hour and a half before we train. And we'll talk about money, we'll talk about business, we'll talk about relationships, we'll talk about, fame and, how that can be a negative and how that can be toxic.
you know, and then also how fitness changes life and how adopting this as a more positive than a negative.
How would he say it's changed his life?
So like I said, he's an addictive mindset. He has an addictive mindset. So as this is more of a positive addiction for him, it's allowing him to feel better, do better, be more aware of his own, you know, every celebrity is going to have their issues, right? They're going to be nagging at times because they're used to having things brought to them.
No, yeah.
He catches himself now. He goes, man, that ain't it. That's not how I should act. So I don't know if that's a correlation, but he feels it is. And that's fine with me, as long as, you know, he sees it, because he's around real people now. Yeah. As opposed to people that just want something from him. So I think that does play a big role with not just the fitness, but being around people that are just like, all right, man, you're Tim, whatever. Like, we don't look at him as Timbaland, the, you know, multiple Grammy award-winning record producer. Does
he see, or do you see the potential that Story is, just because we live in this fitness strength world? It's been part of our life our entire life, where we live in this world now where a lot of the problems that we see around us can be solved by people just eating better and actually exercising. I'm not talking powerlifting and all this other shit, but just training. Yeah. But we live in this world where it's like toxic to even fucking talk about it. Yeah. Right? Where he's got a bigger voice, you know, that's going to reach people that just need to fucking exercise. Exactly. And it would solve so much, you know, as far as anxiety they may have, or depression they may have, they feel, general well-being, brain fog, all this other kind of stuff. Yep. And we need that, you know, in this industry. Absolutely. Right? Because we're all screaming in a fucking hurricane, is how I explain it, right? Where if you get voices that are not in that hurricane, just to be able to say, hey, man, you know, if you don't need to look like a bodybuilder or be as strong as a powerlifter or fight like a fighter. Yeah. But getting in shape can make a big fucking difference. You can be more creative. Yeah. You know, you can feel better. You can alleviate a lot of health issues, joint issues, a lot of the problems, you know, people have. You know, we're in a way being always busy, you know, like we are, you know, like personally we both are, is a kind of a blessing and a curse. Yeah. Right? It's a curse because you never feel like you're getting anything fucking done because there's too many things to do. But it's a blessing because you don't have any time to really fucking be depressed about anything. you got shit to do. You got time. We got to worry about this shit. Yeah. There's too much to do.
Yeah. I've heard from multiple people that, like, there's some traits that successful people have. It's like they feel like they're not doing enough, but they also feel like they're destined for more. So there's a push and pull effect, right? There's a tug of war going on with your brain and with your mentality. And so, like, for me, it's like, if I'm not doing something, I feel restless, right? I can't just sit and not do something. Something has to be progressive. Even if I'm watching a movie with my wife, like, there has to be something on that I can take from it. Yeah. You know, and every time we watch movies, it's like, all right, what am I learning from this movie? You know, or what am I learning from this documentary? And also, it's obviously spending time with them. So I like work. I like the definition of work. Yes. When people think they have a negative connotation of work, like, work to me is getting the job done and getting better. So, like, and my wife's gonna fucking trip about this, but spending time with my wife is work. But that's because I'm trying to be the best husband I can be. No. Spending time with my kids is work, but I'm trying to be the best father I can be. It doesn't mean that I don't like it, I don't enjoy it. I love work. So it doesn't mean that I don't love them. It actually means that I love them more.
Well, in a way, it's prioritizing. It's a task. It's making the time to have that there, right? Exactly. So how do you go about scheduling your week and day then?
Yeah, that's constantly changing based upon new, you know, things that I'm doing. But for the most part, like, I've now been able to structure my days to where I'm staying up north with my family at least 3 to 4 days out the week, and 3 to 4 days out the week I'm down south. So one, that helps me with budgeting my money, because we all know gas prices are crazy. Two, it's time. I'm in the car a lot, so I'm driving roughly 6 hours a day when I'm going down south, right? So I'll go to my gym, I'll go to Miami, I'll come back to my gym, I'll come back up home. That can be 3 hours at most times because of traffic. So it's 3 hours down, 3 hours back easily. And so that's a large amount of time that I use my time very wisely. Audiobooks, podcasts, so on and so forth. I'll even take calls, meetings, Zoom sessions, whatever.
Yeah.
I've been able to do that, and honestly, I've been able to learn so much from those drives. So I've been doing this. I've been driving an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours down and back for almost 10 years now. So that's 10 years of like what I call like, you know, driving university in a sense, right?
Yeah.
I'm on the interstate just learning. And so it gives me that opportunity to grow. But scheduling out my time now to where I'm more present when I get home is most important, because you can be there and everybody knows that you can be there, but you're not present.
So how do you do that?
I have to shut it off. And I know
the word have, right? But
I'm getting better at it.
Yeah. So what has helped you get better at it?
Front loading everything I need to do in the beginning of the day. That way, at the end of the day, I can shut it down.
Yeah.
So I'll get up at 4 a.m. I'll get most of my stuff done in the morning before they wake up. Then I'll take my son to school. Then I'll go drive down south. I'll get all that stuff done by 1, 2, 3 o'clock. I'm out of there by 3, 4 o'clock, and then I'm home. Those are the days I go down south.
Yeah.
Now, the days I'm up north, even better, because now I can go, all right, the kids are in school. My wife's probably going out. You know, she's a real estate agent, so she goes and shows houses and stuff in the mornings. And I'm basically working from 4 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then we have lunch. I'm able to have lunch with my wife, which I haven't been able to do that, I don't know, however long. And then the rest of the day, pick my son up from school, maybe have 1 or 2 calls in that afternoon, but that's it. And then by 5 o'clock, it's shutdown time.
So how do you know when to bring on new projects?
It's got to feel right. And I got to know if I have the time to do so. And it doesn't take me to understand that. Like, it takes me to understand it, but it doesn't, I need somebody else to be like,
yeah, but you've been around long enough to know that most new projects fail. Yeah. Real quick. Yeah. Like, you know, within the first few weeks.
Yeah.
So you can't avoid all, you see what I'm saying? You can't push things back because you kind of, this is a fucked up thing we're talking about right now, right? Because you don't really want to start anything expecting it's going to fail. Yeah. But you know the probability that it's going to is going to be really high.
Well, you got to do your market research. Like, first and foremost, I'm going to see exactly like what the problem is. If this is something that is going to solve a big problem, then I think that it can be successful. Actually, I know it can be successful. Yeah. And you go about it in the right ways. You have a good SOP, and you know exactly what you need to hit on. Finding out the details and then organizing a plan of action, it can be successful. Yeah. It takes consistency, it takes effort and focus. But you have to figure out what's the problem that you want to solve. And is it a big problem for that to be solved? Yeah. And if you're looking for high reward, high ticket, you got to solve rich people problems. So at that point, we're figuring out what's that problem. And usually it's like, all right, we need to make sure that it's more of it's an exclusivity factor, right? It's convenience factor. It's a time factor. So if I can hit those 3 points, if I can take care of those 3 points, we have a lucrative business at our hands. So all the online stuff, all the online programs, all the content that I produce, it all feeds into that system. So now when I go and do, these seminars, or when I go and do these webinars, they've been watching me for years online. I know that's feeding the system. When I do new projects, or new projects get brought to me, and there's been countless that I had to turn down because I just didn't see the big picture. And usually I'm good at that. And even if I saw the big picture, it's just not right for the time. Since timing is everything.
Yes.
So I gotta say, one, is this right for my demographic? Am I gonna be able to organize this in the right way to where I'm gonna be able to take my demographic and let them buy into this situation? If not, then it's not gonna work for me. Yeah. And it can't be so far outside of the spectrum of my expertise that where I'm just kind of going this shit blind, right? It has to correlate in some capacity. Yes. Right? Because I've had guys wanting me to do like a bunch of credit repair and shit like that. I'm like, this has nothing to do with me. Yeah. It's business, but it doesn't make sense.
Yes.
You know, like, and I'm cool. I like business. I'm more in that now. I'm deep into it. But I think like things like content creation, production studio stuff, because I've been doing that.
Yeah.
Right? I can help people build their brands because I've been doing that. It all correlates to what I've been doing. Building a YouTube channel, building a podcast, like what you're doing. Yeah. We can help those types of people. I do that with my mentorship.
Yes.
So like coaches, for the most part, they get stuck in the X's and O's. They get stuck in the physiology, the anatomy, the biomechanics, all the programming. Yes. Programming is big, by the way.
Yes,
everybody wants to know the best periodization protocol.
Yeah.
Right? They forget about, like, if you're in the private sector and you don't know how to run your books, you're going to be fucked.
Oh, if you don't know how to market, you're fucked.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody cares.
Yes.
There's been guys that have been able, like for me, I was able to, word of mouth, I've been able to grow, you know. But you got to learn how to properly organize ad spend. You got to know your ROAS. Like, you got to know all these things in order for you to actually build and grow, because there's going to come a time where warm traffic is going to run out and you got to work it to cold. And how are you going to find and how are you going to get that attention? And so you have to learn social media marketing. You have to learn online marketing. You have to learn guerrilla marketing. And there's all these things that come into play. I still think offline marketing has its place. I still think going out there serving flyers, you know, talking to local businesses can do a world of good, right? You can bring people in doing that shit, especially if you're a good talk game.
Yes.
If you have extroverted tendencies, right, or you're an extrovert, you can do that.
Well, there has to be multiple streams, right? So, you know, I can say this now, like, what if the internet shut down for a month? Yeah. And everybody's going to say, oh, fuck, that will never happen.
Oh, yeah, it's
okay,
possible.
Well, there's a lot of shit that just happened in the last few years that people said would never happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if that happened, is there a revenue stream that's coming in that does not involve
there
being
always
online?
Has to be. You always have to have a contingency plan.
Yes.
You know, so like, I'll always go back to working one-on-ones or group training or just coaching people, right? If that's the case, you know, if that's what we have to do, if the internet shuts down, everything's done, right? Or technology just takes a shit and then like we go back to the Stone Age. I can grab a person right now and service them, and they will pay me for that service.
Yeah, I think in business, the contingency plan that you just mentioned is huge.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people have this mentality of no backup plan. I'm just going all in.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I get it, right? But it's fucking stupid in business because a lot of things don't work, right?
Exactly.
The other thing I would throw out there is running the worst case scenario of any new project. Like if this doesn't work, if it's a program you're doing or whatever it is. So if this program doesn't work, what are the pieces that could be disassembled to be used for something else? You know, so if it's 100 exercise videos, like, okay, cool, I can have that. That's an asset. Don't know what it would be used for, but maybe later it's used for something else.
Exactly.
And then it gets pulled apart. So if this ends up being a break even or even a loss, what are the takeaways that are there?
That's great that you said that, because when you're in business or when you're whatever you're doing, coaching, whatever, training, you always got to look at like, why am I doing something, right? So like if I'm going to go let's say I do this podcast, right? Like obviously I want to do this podcast, right? I want to sit down with you. I want to talk with you. But if you weren't a guy that I've been following for like decades and you were just some guy that was like, once you come down and do a podcast, I would still probably do it, because I can leverage whatever I've done in here and talk to you about, and I can put that and repurpose that on my other platforms.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Is what is there, you know, worst case scenario. And people don't do that. Yeah. And they leave so much on the chopping block that they don't have, especially in this industry. You know, so much it's ridiculous.
Have you ever had to like really disassemble or re-identify what you were doing from a business standpoint?
More times than I've had to not.
Yeah.
You know, 100%. You know, it could be a product that it just doesn't sell. Yeah. Like, so then what? You know, and these are all questions I'm trying to answer before even bringing the product in. Yeah. Or adding a new revenue stream would be a big one. Like, okay, if I'm gonna add this revenue stream, then what's the cost of putting in this revenue stream? Yeah. What's the worst case scenario? Yeah. Like, how much am I willing to just burn if nothing comes. I won't do it if there's actually zero. If there's nothing, if it doesn't work and there's nothing left, then I won't do it.
Yeah.
That would be like bringing a product in that I wouldn't even be able to like give away to charity for a write-off.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be something that's there.
I was gonna say, what's the least amount that you can get from it to where you're like, all right, this is.
Yeah. Well, that's the risk reward too, right? So that's the other balance is you're gonna play in this little area where there's risk rewards a little bit better, probably most of the time, but every now and again, you got to put your dick on the line, you know, and the risk is going to be a little bit bigger because accordingly the reward should be a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
If you think it out and do the things that you were talking about, you run this, like what's the marketing plan, what's the demographics, what's the research, because the risk without having all that is just ignorance.
Yeah.
Right. It's to me, it's just stupidity. It's not even doing the due diligence to be able to see what you just assume.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of people, right? They just assume.
Have you ever assumed, like, you were like, I got a great hunch on this?
Yeah. None of them have ever paid out.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, you learn over a period of time, you know, that and for most of the things, you know, I can relate to this because it's retail, so I can relate to it as products. For probably 95% of the products, they don't sell. You know, but if you don't have the 90% that don't sell, you don't find the 5 that do.
Yeah.
And to think that you're only going to find the 5 that do, you're really stupid. You know, you're just not. You know, and that's a different sector than if it's going to be something that is a long play that takes more work. Say when I wrote the program with John's a different, so that's service oriented, right? That's like, okay, what's this? What's the time commitment? How much time is this going to take?
Yeah.
Because it's a lot. You know, it's more than people think.
That's what I was going to say. Do you weigh the risk reward?
Oh, 100%. Because I got to look at that, but then I got to look at the opportunity cost, not just the time.
Yeah.
Like this time can be put to something else that could have this return. Where now so it's not just the timeline, it's that. But then what's the potential pro out of this? Now, if it doesn't work, what's left?
Yeah.
You know, what are the pieces here? Okay, there's a lot of things that I could break apart to make as micro blogs or, you know, workouts or whatever.
Yeah. You get content regardless.
Yes.
You know, like even the stuff that you did with John was awesome.
Yes.
You know, like there was pieces of content that you could still repurpose.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you probably still do.
Yes.
You know, and even with this podcast, there's so many things that we're going to take from this.
Oh, yes.
So it's really just like finding out, all right, what's the long-term effect and how can we multiply this through this one time that we're doing this?
Yes.
And like even with product, that's why I was talking to you before about, like, you know, for me, I look at it as, I think product overall is a better business model than a service.
It can be because it's easier to scale if it works.
Exactly. Your margins.
Yeah, the margins suck compared to service, but you can't scale a service very well either.
Yeah, because you run out of time. So that was my biggest issue, right? So I'm like, I can increase margins because my time isn't limited, right? And now, let's say, for instance, I have a coach that I have to fulfill that acquisition. So now, like, okay, now I'm fulfilling that, but now what's the cost of that fulfillment? So then the margins could be just the same as if I had a product. So I go, well, now if I'm doing the same thing, then why don't I just have both going on at the same time?
Yes.
And now margins are the same, could be slightly increased, but I'm buying back my time, and I could do other things.
And if it spreads out, like a product is essentially a revenue stream, right? Where, you know, everybody talks about multiple revenue streams. Well, you know, I can sit here and say every product it's its own revenue. At least a category, it's a revenue. I don't have to start a new business to sell equipment or one just to sell bands. You know,
like the same. You got like thousands of business.
It's all the same. It's all there. Where the same thing with, you know, any content product, it can be its own business, I suppose. It depends upon what the marketing is, and sometimes it probably should be, because it might get too diluted if it is like a Gen Pop thing, but everything else is known as this. Then you try to slide that in with all this other stuff, and people are like, "What the fuck is this?" You know, and
people do it right now.
That becomes an issue because of that, right? So and that gets into brand identity and how far you can step outside.
Well, that's another thing I wanted to ask you, because I've been going so deep for so long, and now I want to branch out. And this is where Pushing Peaks is allowing me to step out and do this. There's some hurdles there. There's some growing pains, you could say, to where people are kind of like, is it a combat sports program? And I'm like, no. Like, what are you doing with Tim again? I'm like, we're just doing what we've been doing. Like, it's not like I haven't been working with him. Mm-hmm. You've been seeing this. You've been seeing the result. You've been seeing the progressions. It's just like now we're trying to build this, because I think people forget I worked with General Pop when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like I did that. So it's not brand new to me. You just know me as the combat sports guy. You know, I've been doing powerlifting, bodybuilding, strongman, you know, but you know me as the combat sports guy. And I made this happen. Mm-hmm. Like, I did this. I get it. Because I went real niche and I went real deep. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, all right, I want to branch out. And I think that for me, I'm mastering pivoting. Like, as you can see, I mastered the pivot. It's funny because me and Mike had this conversation. We did my podcast, and now he's doing bodybuilding from strongman. That's his identity. Your identity was powerlifting. Mm-hmm. I believe that I have multiple skill sets based on the root talent that I've been given. Why? And I know it sounds bad in a sense, and people may think like, oh, you should just be a master of one. But I never thought that. Like, that's why I did MMA. You know, I think you should be competent. I think you should be 80% good at everything, and then you should be 120 on one thing.
Yeah. Well, you're going to get typecasted. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's just kind of how the market works. Like, I'm still the powerlifting guy. Like, everybody thinks we only sell equipment to powerlifters, where it makes up 5% of our revenue over the past decade. Right? That's always going to be there for that general perception. Yeah. But to know that allows the marketing, because it's still broad-based marketing. Like, educating and outfitting is pretty simple, right? Educating and outfitting and live, learn, pass on is all pretty simple. Mm-hmm. Where what I pushed back on you a little bit earlier about was, what's the training philosophy? When it's, in a sense, if I'm to reduce it down, would be this, whatever, the condensed conjugate, right?
So let me ask you this. What is a philosophy to you?
A philosophy to me would be the base of a program. Basically, if you want to say 5-3-1, that's Jim's philosophy, right? To me, the training...
Wouldn't it be...
It's still block.
Yeah, what I'm saying... No, that's fine.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, like, that would be your method of training.
It would be the method, but I would call it training philosophy. That's just how I would call it.
I think of philosophy as a mindset.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
That would
that's
be
where the disconnect was.
Yeah, well, that's not a disconnect, but it's... To ask that is wise, right? Because this is where misconceptions come. Because I would say my philosophy would then be live, learn, pass on.
Exactly.
Right? Where my training philosophy, or what the training method would be, I'm going to operate, my bias is going to be out of conjugate. Sure. Right? That's my bias. It may not always happen, but that's my bias, right?
Okay. I get
where if your training philosophy, as I would describe it, is condensed conjugate, then it doesn't matter if it's a football player, if it's a celebrity, if it's an MMA, it doesn't matter, because that's why I asked earlier with Timberland, are you running him through the same? And you are, right? All those screens are all the same. He just falls way lower on all of them. Yeah. But it's still the same. Yeah. So when it comes to that marketing piece, this is the marketing piece. Like, no, it's not a training program, but to be honest, it never was a training program. It was a methodology of training that was put together to accommodate basically anything you slip in there.
Well, really, it was to accommodate people that always need to be ready at all times. Yeah. So tactical population, I work a lot with the SWAT guys, military, fighters, even general pop. They just need to be good at everything at all times, or at least have some focus points, but all the dials are turned up.
Yeah, and I think any trainer that's been around paying attention, studying, educating themselves, passing on, helping others, is going to develop their own style or philosophy. And that, whatever that is for whoever that is, if it's DeFranco, if it's Wendler, whoever it is, they're all going to operate from that same base. No matter who they work with. If it's their mom, You know, if it's some out of shape person, it's just a very, very scaled down version of this, because that's what you know best. You know how to analyze it. You know how to look and see. This is off. This is off. I mean, it'd be dumb to not do that. And then it regresses and progresses. You know, because who knows? You still may not have had the biggest freak you're ever going to have. You may have somebody that comes in, and then you start to do all the metrics, and you're like, holy shit. Like, everything's out of this. I don't even know if I need to train this person.
I know.
Then you're challenged. Like, well, can we make it better? Right? So both ends.
Well, then at that point, I'm looking at, like, I'm pinpointing the limitation. Right? Because there's got to be something. It's going to be either conditioning, it's going to be mobility, it's going to be maybe like a strength deficit, whatever.
There always is. It's just when it gets regressed, everything is. So then when everything is, what's the priority? What's the most important? You know, without getting them hurt, discouraging them, making them want to quit, and not making fitness a part of their life.
Well, that's where, like, that assessment comes into play. And then finding out the details. And I think it does come down to, like, movement quality. Like, in general, you can't get underneath the bar if you can't squat with no weight. We all know that, right? So, like, I'm looking at, from the joint by joint approach, I'm looking up the kinetic sequence and seeing exactly how well they're moving at a particular time frame, and then also how well they can breathe, how well they can recover, heart rate recoverability, all of that comes into play. And that comes from me just looking at them move, right? So every day is an assessment too as well. Every time they step in the gym, I'm watching them move, I'm watching them react to certain situations, I'm watching them react to how I talk to them. Because even with fatigue, that's a big indication. So, like, the guys that I work with, you know, doing a lot. And even with you know, celebrities like Timberland, he's got a lot on his plate. So stress is a big thing. And if I have an increase in cortisol throughout a sustained amount of time, I don't care what you do, it's not going to be sufficient, and you're going to hurt yourself in the long run. So, which is stress management, which is the same thing you do with the fighters. Right? You know, it falls in there. And then when you have the other cool thing, and you already do this, is once you have that core methodology, philosophy, however people want to define that, established, you can coach it to other coaches, right? Not that they're going to become, and they shouldn't become, the best practitioners of that philosophy. It teaches them a philosophy. Which is a hack. Right? Because a lot of people that come up through, you're looking at this, you're looking at this, you're looking at, like, Louis stuff, and you're looking at all these different things to be able to push yours all together, which was way harder to do 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You know, now it's accessible, where somebody will walk you through exactly why their methodology and philosophy is that way, which is a huge hack. It can expedite things so much. And that's where, like, you're getting a lot of, honestly, there's real athletic genetic freaks out there, because there is so much more information. You know, there's, especially even getting down to, like, sleep and nutrition, there's way more out there than there was 20 years ago. You know, even fighters are getting better, they're getting more adept, they understand the nuanced details on how they need to structure their training. But, like, 8 years ago, it was still bad. It was probably the worst it's been. It started to get better when the UFC PI came in, and I'm just talking about fighters because that's my highest experience.
So you're going back to when it was all circuit training.
Fuck yeah, man. And I was like, oh man, this is bad. And I know it was bad, because I used to do it too. We all did it. But I was like, there's got to be a better way. And then, you know, guys like Andy Galpin will come into the situation, and they got a science background, and then, you know, now we're learning things from other industries, and we're learning other things from, like, different sports scientists, and now we get to, because everybody likes fighting, we can, you know, get conversations with these guys, and go online and learn this shit, and then correlate it over to the fight game. And now fighters are getting better. Fighters are getting crazy better. On top of that, they're starting at a younger age too as well. We talked about that too. It's just another level. And I think that's one of the things, as a growing sport, and I know they talk about, like, fighter pay and everything else, like, it's a growing sport, and whether or not you want to say that Dana takes up most of the money or whatever, it's a sport that needs to still grow. And it'll get there in due time. But I do believe that if we keep on this trajectory, it'll be a solid, it'll be as good, if not better, than the NFL. When it comes down to salary pay, when it comes down to athletes getting taken care of, when it comes down to just athletes knowing how to train themselves, pensions, all of that, the whole nine. Hopefully, I like to see that from my guys. But again, when we talked about technology, we talked about information, there's so much out there now. I even look at it when people don't know certain things, like baseline stuff, I'm like, how do you not know this? How do you not know this with everything at your fingertips, literally at your fingertips on your phone?
Yeah.
You know? Whereas, like, I know that has to be something that I look at, because I go, if you don't know this, that means that you didn't make the effort to go search for it. So you're coming to me because you want the answers when you could have just Googled that shit.
Yes, and see, that's something I don't know the answer to, right? Because I've been online for 25 years. You think I would, right? Mm-hmm. But not everybody, you're an outlier in the fact that you went down deep to try to learn all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
If you look over the years, how many people wanted to do what you're doing right now but quit?
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people are still doing it today, and they're outliers.
Yeah.
But it's just more visible today how many people fall out.
Yeah.
Fall out. So I don't really know if it's more or less. You get what I'm saying? Because we can sit here and say, well, the information is more condensed, it's streamlined, there's so much more of it, there's confusion. I think those people that still have the drive to want to be great at what they do are still going to have the drive to be great at what they do. But they've always been the minority.
Yeah, true.
Where maybe we're expecting to see that to be the majority, or just because we can see it. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Just because we can see it so much that it's like, what the fuck, man? They're all not even trying, right? Where I think they are. What I tell young coaches is, how cool is it today if you were coming up? Think about it. Say you're coming up today, in today's world, you have access to all this information, and you know for a fact 95% of your competition is fucking lazy.
Yeah.
Right? So all you need to do is actually just fucking work hard.
Take the initiative.
And put the time in and let everybody else just fall to the wayside. Holy shit,
It's funny because it was almost the exact opposite when I started to come up, because everybody was hungry for knowledge. So we were always on Elite FTS. We were always on YouTube. We were always searching things like Westside and all that, and reading the books, and like constantly studying, because we're all on the race to the top.
It's either that, or that's just you all saw each other.
Yeah.
So you didn't see the people that fell. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it was harder to find each other then.
Yeah.
Right? Because
and you knew who they were because
they were at the same conferences, they had the same seminars,
exactly.
They were on the same forums, they were on the same, because it was harder to be able to find the information.
Yeah.
Where now it's easier. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know the answer.
That's interesting that you say that, because it's true, man. Like,
but I know that for those I know it's no different for those that are willing to work hard and take the kicks.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. There's a lot. Like, I don't think people understand how much adversity you have to go through just to be mediocre.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
I still go through it.
Yeah.
I still go through it. The life is undulating.
Yes.
There's ebbs and flows, it's ups and downs, and there's going to be more downs than ups at times, and then you got to kind of make sure that you stay the course and know that there's another thing is, like, you got to know there's a higher cause for everything. So, like, if I don't put that in perspective, this is why I'm doing this, then I'm going to fold.
Yes.
Right? And every day you have to have a purpose. And I think that people run out of their purpose. They don't understand, or they didn't solidify it from the start. They just wanted to do it because it was cool, or that they saw somebody else do it. They saw me do it.
Yeah.
I get a bunch of kids ask me, I want to do what you're doing. I'm like, do you? Do you really? Because you're going to have a long road ahead of you.
So it's a long story, but the purpose is a big one. The other thing they have to contend with is everything they see is fake. Mm-hmm. So they think everybody else is succeeding when they're not.
Yeah.
Right? And the other big one is you have to have faith that it's going to work out. Right? No matter what it is, or when it's hard, you have to have the faith that it's going to be all right.
Yeah. And I believe that the deeper you go, the harder it is to deal with that, because your ramifications, the things that may go wrong it gets heightened because now you're more successful. You can lose more. When you got nothing to lose, you can make those decisions. Like, you can go all out. But now when you got shit to lose, it's like that Rocky type of mentality. It's like, you got nothing to lose, Rock, you know? And now you made the money. You have the fame. It's like, you could lose all this now. Make one bad decision. So then you take a different look at things, and you be more methodical and more calculated with your approach. Whereas that when you're young, you can make those dumbass decisions.
Yes.
You know, like 20s, like you got to fuck up a lot.
Yeah.
And you can. Yeah. It's good.
But I would say those decisions would have been better when you were younger if you had more to lose. I know mine would have been.
Yeah.
Because I would have thought a little bit more.
Yeah.
Where now it's just reckless. Right? It's okay to be reckless then, and sometimes it pays off big, I suppose. It didn't for anybody I personally know, but for some people, you know, it kind of does. But as you get older, you have to be more calculated.
Yeah. More people are dependent upon you.
Yeah.
Where you don't, at a young age, you don't have to worry about yourself. That's the thing. It's like, all right, cool. If I fuck this up, it's only messing me up. But if I fuck this up now, I'm messing up my whole family and everybody that works for me. You know, but that's the price we pay.
It is. I mean, it still can, right? Yeah. But it's not going to be stupid. Like, you're not going to go fucking beat somebody over the head with a gun because you know that's stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But back then, right, it's different.
It's like whatever.
Right? Yeah. I mean, so a lot of those big young things kind of get alleviated just because you learn that it's.
Look, if I would have did the same thing I did at 16 now, it's over.
Yeah.
It's fucking over.
Yeah.
But I would never do that. Like, my whole mindset changed because I was in a situation where I felt like I was being suffocated, where I needed to get out, and I guess that was my way of trying to get out.
Yeah.
You know, now I'm a little bit more clear on what I need to do, and even then it's like, all right, you know, I have my vision, I have my goals, I have the people that I love and the people that I want to take care of, and everything that I do, every decision I make, every schedule that I make is predicated towards that aspect of my life. So when I make the decision to do things, it's also looking at that situation and making sure that it's appropriate for everything. That's where, like, when things come my way, I'm like, I can take calculated risks. Absolutely. We always do. But the risk can't outweigh the reward. And you have to be mindful of that. You almost have to look at it from the outside looking in. And I have to detach myself from maybe the feeling I get from wanting to go after it, because that's my desire. Yeah. And I have to pull myself back and not be the kid at the candy store trying to reach in, take some candy when I know I didn't pay for it.
Yeah. I think that I think you're taking bigger risks now than you think you are, because the perspective on how you see it changes after all the, like, when we train in the gym, we break down tissue, then we recuperate, then that tissue heals and we become stronger, like with all adaptations. Where, you know, when you're younger in the industry, I'll just use an example. Say you make a post and you get one bad comment, like, fuck this dude, right? Right now, you don't care, right? Because all those little things that pissed us off over the last 10 years or whatever it's been have built calluses to now the risks that we're taking now are unfathomable to what you would be doing 10 years ago, because 10 years ago what your peers thought of you meant so much.
They did.
Or what somebody else would say negatively you meant so much that a lot of the things that you may have done back then you didn't do because you were afraid of, man, what will they think?
Exactly.
Who are never going to support you in the first place.
Well, I also think it's because of the fact that, and that's a great point, I think that you know who you are more now. Like, for me, there's not a lot I have to prove. So then if somebody says something negative, I'm like, look at my track record, look at my resume, look at, I know who I am and I know what I'm capable of. If you try to attack character, well, I know who I am. And I know the people that around me that are in my circle love me for who I am. You don't even know who I am. So why am I worried? I don't even know who you are.
That's my point. That's just one example of many. A lot of the other things would be, man, I don't know exactly what copy of this should be.
Yeah.
Where after a while, you're like, you know what, fuck it. Nobody ever knows.
Yeah.
Just throw it out. If it don't work, you change it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Are you more aware of your decision making now than you were, let's say, 20 years ago?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yes, 100%.
But why though?
Because I fuck up a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it doesn't mean I'm still not going to fuck up. I still say I fuck up 90% of the time. But that's the price you pay for the 10% of the time that things work. That's just how it goes. Training's that way. Not every rep's a PR.
Yeah.
Very few are.
Yeah.
But you got to put in the other ones to be able to get that PR.
Exactly.
So I would say I'm more calculated in what I'm more reserved in what the potential upside can be, and I'm definitely more calculated in what the worst case scenario can be.
Okay.
Right. So it's those I think hurt me as well. Yeah. So it helps, but also hurts.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes I wonder. You know, if you just said fuck it, just would the return actually something you don't know?
Yeah.
Right, and maybe I'd be more risk adverse if I had complete financial freedom. Like there's enough money in the bank that I don't have to worry about ever working again, right? Then it's like maybe I don't know though. I don't know. That's a good question. I think
you'd be even more reserved.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer.
The guys, I mean. Luckily, I'm blessed to be able to be around these guys that are like super successful, billionaires, multimillionaires, and they're more reserved with their money than anybody I know.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah. There's a reason why they're there.
Yeah.
So I learned from them because they're like, well, there's a reason why you made that money, and now you have liquid, and you can do what you want to do, but you're reserved, and you're like the cheapest guy I know. And I can say that because I've been around it. And I go, well, if they're doing it, then we have to adopt that mindset because I know I don't have that much money.
Yeah.
I don't have the money that they have, and they're still cheap as ever.
I know that some of my more expensive mistakes over the years have created a lot of that. Because some mistakes can get really fucking expensive.
Yeah.
So that really makes you pause. So I could see why they may think that, because maybe they did make some bad investments and lost like hurtful money.
Yeah.
Like fucking really bad. Like, oh shit, like millions gone.
Sure. Absolutely.
And that I could definitely see that.
Well, it's trial by fire. Like you're like, all right, I've been through the wars. I understand the battles, and I know what it takes. And I guess the best thing to do is learn from the battles, like we've done. And
to find new ones, because it's something else that I've seen, not just in business, but in powerlifting and probably in sports in general, is what I see in powerlifting is people will set like a multi-year plan. Like, I want to be world record holder. I want to be a world title holder. Let's use MMA. And then they do it. And say they train for 5 years for that. Yeah. Then they get it. And that whole pursuit, that 5-year pursuit was all about that. Then they're lost.
Fuck, what's next? Yep.
Right? And there has to be something that drives that same passion and drive there.
Yes.
Because being complacent is probably fine if you want to retire. But that's still not even fine though.
Yeah.
Because what's next? Because you can lose it all.
When you were at your most successful in powerlifting, when you made it to the pinnacle of your success, did you feel like there was nothing else that you could do, or did you have another aspiration that was in the same realm? Like, it was powerlifting done for, or were you like, now I want to go into business, or I want to keep pursuing more weight and more numbers and more records?
The business was being developed as I was powerlifting, so my education was developed as I was powerlifting. So I don't think, well, I do. I mean, I think I could have lifted more. Yeah. I could have lifted better numbers, but I don't think I could have physically been stronger. So the way I would explain that is I could have learned how to use the gear, the multiply gear I was using at the time. I could have used that way better, which would have filled that gap. But I don't regret that, because we didn't know that at the time, right? So I finished the last several years, or 5 years, my whole time at Westside, I would say. So that whole time, I went into that with the mindset of I don't want to leave and ever say what if.
Yeah.
So that was all of that. It was towards the end where it was like, man, this is, you hit plateaus, right? You hit a plateau, then it goes up. Then you hit a plateau, then it goes up. And it's like, man, I'm really fucked up. And I hit another plateau, and this is like 3 more years, and I can't fucking grab the bar, but I know I probably could if I really gave a shit. I could figure it out. But I didn't want to. So, and that was a kid in business, so the multiple variables at the same time. But it's still after that was over, I didn't want to be around the sport at all. And the business is kind of in the sport, you know, so it's associated with the sport. So that was interesting. So it took me a while to kind of come back to why I started the sport in the first place. You know, and that's kind of a reoccurring theme with a lot of lifters that I have on the podcast is, you know, the higher they get in the sport, sometimes they get caught up, and I'm sure MMA and fighting's the same way. There's a lot of political drama.
Oh yeah.
Right, and the fighters, they get wrapped up into that. Sometimes it makes it's harder to recover. Their cortisol's higher. They're frustrated, and all this other stuff, and they forget why they started fighting in the first place.
True.
And most of fighting, most of MMA is not, they make up maybe the top 1%. There's a whole bottom 90% that just love to get in the cage or get in the ring and fucking battle.
It's so funny, man. Guys calling to me, I just want to do one fight. I'm like, what?
That's most of the sport.
So crazy.
You see what I'm saying? That so the drama that y'all see at the very top is actually the vocal minority, which is crazy if you think about it. Where the silent majority just wants to get in there and fight, mix it up, have fun. That's why that's why they got it in the first place.
There's some similarities with powerlifting too, though. You know, it's just people just want to try a meet. They just want to do one meet. You know, they want to go 9 for 9, or you know, and they want to make sure that they can say they did it.
You know? And it could be for multiple reasons though too. It could be.
I never was that. Go ahead, my bad.
No, I know, but that I would say, and fighting too, and all sports that are individually based and very easy to get into. It's just somebody that wants to, like you doing the bodybuilding. It's just somebody that wants to try to conquer something. Maybe it's the only thing they ever finished. Right. So no matter what their total is, or even if they do well in the fight, they trained for it. They did it, and they fucking stepped in. And did something to where when they're done, they're like, you know what, I fucking did this.
That's cool.
Right, and it is. Isn't that what most people are in it for?
For sure. I just always looked at it as, if I'm gonna do it, it's long term. You know, and that's could be my downfall too as well. Like I didn't really look at the long aspect of it in a sense. Like when I did bodybuilding, I was like, I'm gonna be a pro. like that's my mentality. You know, because I had to attack it as such. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been all in the way I needed to be. You know, same thing with powerlifting. I was like, I want to fucking. I didn't know if I could make it to like world record status because of just genetics. Same thing with bodybuilding. Like I was like, I could probably get there, but I'd like to be a pro, or like I'd like to set an all-time total or something like that. But at the end of the day, I want to be the best. I want to be the strongest I can be. I don't want to look the best I can be. You know? And I know that's long term. That's like not just one meet, one competition. You know what I mean?
No, I get it. I'm the same way. But I think where the disconnect comes, at least it did with me, is that we don't understand that the majority are not like that. Right? And sometimes you can get frustrated if it's a client of yours. Like, what the fuck? They don't take this serious. You know, but you have that dialogue with them, so you're determining this from the jump. So that makes a big difference. Like maybe it isn't. They're all, you know, all in type of thing.
Then you coordinate the training based upon their mind frame. You know, and like their mindset of like, all right, I just want to come in here, feel good, you know, move around a bit, say that I did it, and go home. You know, and I'm like, not my cup of tea, but cool, let's do it.
Well, there's other people for that, right?
Exactly.
You know, there's tons of other people for that.
And some guys, man, I know trainers that are really good trainers, but they keep people for like 10 plus years because they just like being around the trainer.
Yes.
They don't get a whole lot of results from them, but they like being around them. They like their, you know, their energy. They like their vibrations and like how they carry a conversation. It's like a highlight of their day.
Yeah.
And there's nothing really wrong with that as long as you're, because the goal from a general pop perspective, you're not just trying to improve, like if you're not trying to improve performance or anything like that, what are we trying to do? Well, we're giving them a service. We're making them feel good, right? Now, if your absolute goal is to like body composition, strength, you got to reiterate, like, let's get their goals accomplished because you know that they're going to feel good with that. If their general goal is just like, I just want to come in here, move around, feel good, you know, say I did it, and then go on about my day, well, cool, let's do it. But that's not me.
Yeah.
But there's coaches out there, there's trainers out there that can do that.
And I think those trainers should define who they want their main population to be, right? Because if that's the trainer that just wants to work with Gen Pop, because there is a huge need for that. We've already established that. Giant, more than ever. Yeah. Then they need to learn the basics. They need to become very, very good at training basics, and then become extremely good at keeping people persistent and consistent. And that's a human thing. That's not a sets and reps and all that other kind of thing. It's a communication thing to be able to do that. Then they would excel beyond their expectations.
I would say if I were like with my guys too, and we vet them too. Like we'll do the personality test on my coaches. We actually run a Hexaco test, which has one more category in there, and basically it shows how well you can have emotional intelligence. And so what I mean by that is like how well they can cope with people and get to know them on another level, to where, okay, I know exactly how I need to communicate with that person. I know how I need to either reprimand them, motivate them, you know, tell them they're doing a good job, whatever. And then from there, I can just find out how I want to progress them. Whether that be, oh, look, we were able to hit, 5 more push-ups or something very simple, but can give them huge reward and boost their mentality, boost their energy to go throughout their days and to get other things accomplished. And that comes with understanding people. So if I were to give them anything, it's like knowing how to be charismatic, knowing how to have great communication skills, knowing how to be extroverted, carrying on conversation, and then getting to the root cause of their demons, their flaws, their insecurities, and then also what do they want to accomplish. And those small goals, if it's small to you, it may be big to them. So you have to put that in perspective.
Yeah. With all the years that you've had and all the clients that you had, all the fighters that you had, tell me about a time when you felt it was all worth it.
There's a couple. I mean, there's a lot. I'll go with one where, Dustin Poirier has been instrumental in my career. Like, his success is my success, He's like his power is personified through me, So like when he wins a fight, I win a fight, So I live vicariously through that, And when he won the interim title against Max Holloway, it was a level of joy that came over me that I was just like, it was an out-of-body experience, And the counter fights were cool, but like I knew how much it meant to him to have a strap wrapped around his waist, because we were in it. We've been growing and working towards it for 3+ years at that point. And then he got it, and the level of joy, it's like true joy came over me, from a coaching standpoint. Obviously, there's other things, but that right there was like, yo, this makes sense. Like, I get it now. And I was probably about 3 years into coaching elite level fighters at that point. I won some awards, but that wasn't a big deal for me. Like, I was like, the awards that I wanted to win, that I set out to win, I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. But it wasn't, it didn't really resonate with me that well. It's when my guys won, and they won the titles, and my girls won the titles, and then on top of that, even like, some of my lower level guys just winning like low level regional scene titles. I was like, and they go to me like, Coach, I wouldn't have done this without you. Even the coaches that I mentor, when they DM me and they message me like, Coach, thank you for everything. I learned a lot. I'm able to, 10x my business. I'm able to, get multiple athletes into my coaching business now, and I'm doing very well, and it's all because of you. And I'm like, that's amazing. It's not all because of me, first of all. It's the work that you put in. I just gave you the tools, and you just ran with it. But that showed me like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it hard for you to accept the accolades? When somebody says you're doing a great job.
Yeah, I don't really like that. I'm a humble guy to a degree. Like, you have to be somewhat humble, but you also have to be confident in yourself, but I don't do too much of that. Like, when they talk about, you got to be braggadocious, you got to tell, you got to show your stuff, especially if you're doing like.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if somebody sends you that message saying that, do you,
it's kind of hard.
Do you actually absorb it, or do you think, it's just another person sending some bullshit?
No, I absorb it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I don't settle, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I make sure I let that be known too as well. Like, I give them their shout out.
Yeah.
Because if they're telling me that means they accomplished something. So I'll share in that success. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, no, here you go, and I'm gonna give them a platform on my platform and showcase that.
Yeah.
I would say I definitely find joy in that. I just don't let it get to my head.
Yes. Yeah. How often do you think about just throwing it all in and doing something else?
So I don't think I'll ever be out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'll ever be out. I think my time is very limited nowadays on being on the floor coaching. I think now I'm pivoting more towards helping my coaches. Mm-hmm. I have my set guys that I'll probably have. I'm 34 now, so I don't really see myself being on the floor every hour on the hour, and I haven't done that in 5 years. Mm-hmm. So now it's more about seminars, speaking, building businesses, building other coaches up, helping my main guys get to the next level or transition them out of the sport and into a career that can be more beneficial for them in the long run. That's really where I'm more focused on now.
And what drives that?
I think that it's a new challenge for me. Like, I don't want to say, like, I know Louis said it's like he stopped coaching football players. It's not a challenge anymore. It's like, I can do that. It's easy. So, like, I think, like, training fighters is always fun. There's always challenges, but I understand the game so much that it's like, all right, I want to do something different. Working with the SWAT guys has been fun. Mm-hmm. Military guys has been fun because it's different, but it's the same. Their mentalities are the same. Some of the things that they have to do are the same, like from an energy system standpoint, all that. And again, my philosophy stays the same.
Yeah.
Training philosophy. But it's just a new, like, the same guys that I'm working with are the same guys that arrested me. You know what I mean? I went to their training facility. That was a spot that I got taken to when I got arrested.
So how did that make you feel?
Full circle.
That's like, not an answer, dude.
I got to think about it. Give me a second. Reborn, redeemed, refueled. I just felt like I transitioned, I transcended, If I didn't go through that situation, who knows where I would have been. If I didn't get locked up, I could have been doing the same shit because I never would have paid the price. And I find joy in working with those individuals because I know what it takes for them to get their jobs done. And it's hard. And I go, man, I respect y'all. I respect everything you do. I work with now the Broward sheriff. It's the sheriff. Mm-hmm. And he's gone, done tremendous things, and he's been in my neighborhood. He's from my neighborhood, So that right there, when you look at it, I'm like, man, that's a blessing. And I was able to take the talents, the experience, the skills that I acquired, the ups and downs, the fucking late nights, staying up all night, waking up early. I used to do boot camps at 5 a.m. and boot camps at 12 midnight, and I'll go back and forth for 5 days straight because I just wanted to help people make a living, and do what I wanted to do. And that's what got me to this position of where I am now. It's not done, it'll never be done. But when we say, yeah, that transition out,
For that moment, did it kind of feel like it was?
Yeah, and nobody could really feel me on that too, because I was sitting in the car before I walked out, and I go, wow, this is fucking crazy. And I walked in there, and it was a little weird, and I still really, like, courthouses and shit like that still bother me, you know, because it was big, like 60 years I was facing, like 2 counts of, you know, armed robbery, attempted murder, and I'm like, I never want to be here again, and I never did. I never looked back. Changed it all, you know. I changed my mindset primarily, like mentality of getting after it, effort, and all that was there, but like trying to prove shit, have a chip on my shoulder, it was gone after that. Even when I started fighting, I never got into another street fight again. It's like, why? I fight every day in the gym. I don't have to prove anything to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, now transitioning into that next space in my life, it's like, I don't have to prove shit. I just want to do what I love to do. I want to help people. And anybody that's willing to take the path with me, let's do it. But you got to be able to catch up, because I'm running fast.
Well, it's still, you started out the whole story, right? Getting after it.
Yeah.
Right? It was just illegal, right? Yeah. Right? So then you had to redirect it, you know, to things that were legal.
Yeah.
You know, and it's that part I view, just talking to you throughout this podcast and earlier, that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
You know, it's just redirecting.
Yeah.
You know, that's the main drive. Mm-hmm. Right? Is what would you do if you couldn't get after anything?
I'd be dead.
Yeah.
I'd be dead. Like, it would kill me from the inside.
Yeah.
You know, I have to do something. It don't matter. I'll be 80 years old still trying to work.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I love work. I love it. You can't pull me away from it. But I will tell you this, is that finding happiness in new things is really what I have to put myself in the right position to do. Because I found, to me, because I moved around so much when I was a kid, like I probably moved about 12 different times when I was a kid. So like, I'm not used to being in one place for a long time. I think that's why I pivot a lot. Mm-hmm. And I said it to my wife, because my wife, she grew up in the same house till she was grown, from the same area. We still live in the same neighborhood she grew up in. Mm-hmm. Like, for me, I'm all over the place. So it's totally different where and she's like, you don't ever get excited for things. And I'm like, I used to fight in a cage, you know, like there's a lot of shit that goes down that gets stuck in here. And then I'm always antsy. Like, I can't. She's like, you can never sit down. And I go, I have to do something. I have to move. And I have to transition. And I think that is a detriment, but it's also a strength, because I'm able to pivot, and I'm able to adapt, and I'm able to overcome, transition, whatever you want to call it. But then again, I also have to stay the course. So I have to know when is the right amount of time to hold down that consistency, and then when it's time to make that pivot. And now I've been able to understand when I need to do so, because it gets to the point where when I wake up and I don't want to do something over and over again for a long period of time, I got to make the change, right? So
that's a tough one too, right? Because that's part of the grind.
Yeah, is
being able to stick it through when you don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. How do you find that, or how do you work that out in your head?
I have to look at it like, if I were to do this for the rest of my life, every day, would I want to do it?
Yeah.
And if the answer isn't a hell yeah, then I got to make the change. You know, if I'm like, I don't want to do that shit. Like, I got to want to do it even when I'm not getting paid.
Yeah.
You know, I went down to Tim's. He didn't have to pay me. He paid me really well, but he didn't have to pay me, because I knew that there was a bigger cause that was going to happen. Yeah. Right? I knew that this shit was going to pay off in other ways. We're about to go train Justin Timberlake and do his new album in a couple months or a couple weeks.
Yeah.
It's a higher purpose, like making that drive. I trained Jake Brutal Boswick. Kid's been with me for 7 years, a bare knuckle fighter. He don't make no money like that. I don't charge him anything. He trains for free. I want to do it. I go there, I drive an hour and a half, get there. He knows it too, and he loves it. He respects it, and he appreciates it.
Yeah.
It's those people that appreciate what I do. I don't charge the fighters anything. I'll do that all the time, all day long. As long as it's not taking away from my family, And as long as it's not draining me of my energy, I'm down to do it. So it's one of those things where I was like, I know I'll do that for the rest of my life. Even with the SWAT guys, I know those guys don't make no money. I make more money than them. But I'll do it because it's what I like to do, and I like being around them. So, but if it's something to where it's like, man, this shit, I don't want to do this shit. I don't want to put myself in a position. I don't want to drain my energy to where it's going to take away from people that I love. I'm not doing it, and then I won't do it. And that's my biggest problem too. My assistant, Maureen, she'll be like, "Are you sure you need to do this?" And I go, "Nah, I don't need to do this. Yeah, fuck this." And so that's my biggest issue. It's like I gotta call it. I gotta say no more times than not.
Yeah. Were there any topics that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
I wanted to talk to you about like how it all started with Elite FTS.
Yeah. It started with, Louis was doing seminars.
Yeah.
And he asked me to start doing the seminars with him. And so I was a personal trainer at the time.
Yeah.
So the degree and all the training foundation was
Were you working at that gym that he opened up? Or
no.
You were working somewhere else?
No, I was working somewhere else.
Okay.
So I came to Columbus for Westside, and I was working in a health club, a corporate fitness center downtown. So it was all Gen Pop. And I did that for 8 years. And then before that, I was a gym manager and basically doing personal training before personal training existed for a while.
What year was this?
Probably 90 is when I came. Yeah. And I mean, the first time I started training anybody was I worked at a health club in my local town in '86. So Louis starts doing these seminars, and I'm like the ride around guy, sort of the demonstration guy.
Yeah.
And after a while, he just got sick of it. These coaches are stupid, so he wouldn't do it. So I said, well, you do the, so then I started doing them. But I remember, I think it was at Ball State at the time, he was being Louis, just going on for like 2 hours. And I grabbed, I was trying to get his attention.
Yeah.
And like, just give me fucking 10 minutes. People were actually sleeping. They were on the floor sleeping.
Get out.
It was there were the disconnect. He's in his Louis, right? He's in his zone.
Yeah.
And so I got his attention, and I just really quick on the dry erase board wrote our basic template down, which was in one of the original T Nation articles. Like here's what we do. It's like a dynamic day, max effort day, is a supplemental accessories. Then after I wrote it, I'm like, fuck, this is easier than I thought. And it's then so after that, he said, just start doing the seminars. And that was the first part, was doing seminars, and he was doing consulting work too.
Yeah.
So going with him to a lot of the pro teams he was going to.
Yeah.
And then it was, I was doing that. So you go do this, so they'd call him, then he'd have them call me, then I'd go do that. And then my wife was training at Westside at the time. And I'm also at a point where there's an ad in Powerlifting USA, and we're selling like supplements. I don't even know what it was, the seminars or something like that. And my wife was bitching to Louis, and she was in the night crew, about how she didn't like her job and whatever it was. And he said, well, why don't you just sell my shit? And so she asked me, and I'm like, well, what shit is he talking about? Because he was selling like a manta ray, belt, squat belt. There wasn't a lot of crap, but we already had stuff. There was the seminar, and there was like Tribulus or some stupid thing I was selling. And so then from there, he gave us whatever that was on consignment. So a couple $1,000s worth of product, which we couldn't have afforded in the first place. And I'm still working as a trainer at the time. So I'm kind of doing both, going back and forth, moving that stuff. So that's when that was the physical part of it. While that was happening, I was also answering questions for this website called deepsquatter.com. Okay. So when I first got on the internet, I mean, this is the time I didn't have a computer. I'm out of college, right? This is fucking, it's probably like 98. So my older brother made me a computer. It's just regurgitated parts. I get on AOL, it's this dial-up shit, right? And I start looking, powerlifting, and then I find Westside, and I'm like, and it was not really what we did. It was just like a summation of Louis' articles.
Okay.
So I think I ended up emailing the guy saying, "Look, would you?" Because he was doing a Q&A.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Would you like me to answer some of these questions?"
Yeah.
Because I'm there.
Yeah,
you know, I'm actually doing this, and I'm actually doing these seminars. So that started, and then in one of the seminars, somebody asked me if I had a website. And I said, "No, I have one." He's like, "No, you don't." You know, it's just like a banner ad. It's just like, here's the one page and like 5 products with prices.
Yeah.
And he's like, "A buddy of mine has this Q&A. It was kind of like a forum, but it wasn't a forum. It's like somebody just asked the questions, you give the answer, that's it. Gotcha. No forum bullshit."
Yeah.
And he needs somebody to help test that. I'm like, well, fuck, I'll do that. I'm kind of doing it now.
Yeah.
You know, except I have to send it to email to somebody, and it takes a month, you know, to get it loaded. So the Elite FTS site, or at the time the Elite Fitness Systems before it got shortened, was just a Q&A. So people, it was Ask Dave. So they'd ask the question, I'd answer it, and it gets posted.
Yeah.
That ran for about a year, and then people started asking, where do you get bands? Where do you get these Russian manuals? Where do you get this?
Yeah.
And so the guy I was working with then is still with me now. We put together a cart, you know, for those items. And then over a period of probably a year, 2 years, the customers and the people online abbreviated the name to Elite FTS because it was easier to write than Elite Fitness Systems.
Okay.
So then I'm like, okay, this is way better. It's shorter.
Did you ever think about doing like EFTS?
I did. But I mean, when you start, you don't know shit. You know, it's just like I total elite. You know.
Yeah.
And so it kind of went into that, and then it was when they abbreviated it. It's like, okay, I probably need to trademark this. You know, for all that. But I liked it because the community named it. You know, I didn't name it. I didn't know until years later I was going to spend the rest of my life saying F as in Frank, T as in Tom, S as in Sam. You know, because it's Elite FTS, F as in Frank, T as in Tom. And then a few years ago we changed it to F as in focus, T as in trust, S as in strength. It's so ingrained.
Yeah. That's cool.
You know, for all those other things.
That's funny.
That was the start. You know, and then as it began to grow, it was more of, what is this going to be a service thing with the seminars, or is it going to be a product thing? And I kept kind of going back and forth with what this was going to be. And then when I finally arrived at the vision, you know, the live, learn, pass on, it was like, I don't want to charge for content. Nobody's charged me. You know, for everything that I ever learned, I need to give
contribution.
Yeah, I need to give back. You know, because those.
How many years in were you when you came to this conclusion?
Probably 1 or 2. I mean, it was pretty quick because I was when I decided this is what I was going to do, and I wasn't going to be in the gym 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started to get positive revenue, and I'm talking 500 a month. I am not talking a lot, like 500 a month. I hired the eMyth Consulting at that time, which was exactly 500 a month. So I was working to make 500 a month so I could pay them the 500 a month. And then that walked me through how to learn business in your business. So it's my degree is in exercise science, nutrition, but I grew up in a family business, so I was around it. And I had my mom and dad to answer questions about business. But this provided me what is the strategic objective, what is the primary aim, what is, you know, the financials, you know, all this gave me, it was a 5-year program the way it was set up at the time. And it took, I did it, I finished it. You know, my whole thing was I'm going to finish this damn thing, even though the financial part pissed me off because we had QuickBooks. Like, why am I learning all this when QuickBooks does it? I kind of get it now, but still, that was kind of the start in the earlier years, but it probably took 6 years before I could pay myself anything. You know, so there was a time when.
How were you making money though? You still training?
I was still training, yeah, and I was still competing. So there's a lot of things being balanced there too. So I had a beeper. You know, we didn't have cell phones, right? So I'd get a page. You know, like, oh shit, somebody called. They're gonna want to order something. Like every 3 days, I might get a page like the greatest thing. Then I'd have to call them, you know, from the landline back.
Yeah,
and
that's crazy.
I sent out flyers, so I'd make flyers and then send them out to every customer I had.
Yeah.
And then I was able to get a hold of, I think it was the NSCA mailing list or a coach's mailing list, and I couldn't send to everybody because I didn't have enough money.
Yeah.
You know, so I would just randomly send to as many people as I can.
Yeah.
At one point, we had catalogs that I printed off my inkjet printer, and then had to fold and staple, and then package and send. And that was a
straight mailing.
Yeah, it was a bitch. There was like 1,000 of those. You know, licking the stamps and shit like that.
Stapling them all together.
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So like it started to blow up though. When it was like your first piece of equipment though, like your first actual elite FTS piece of equipment.
Okay, yeah. Part of when Louis pushed the stuff over, he also pushed over all the equipment that he was selling that was not actually the reverse hyper too.
Yeah.
So it was like a power rack, a combo rack, the belt squat, a reverse hyper. Maybe a bench rack. There's like 5 pieces. So the way that would work is people would order it from me, then I would send it. It's so funny. I would fax Louis, right? And then he would basically take it out of his fax, put it back in his fax, and send it to the manufacturer. And then this went on for a while, and then his manufacturer ended up going out of business without telling anybody. You know, so I have orders out there, and 6 months. I'm telling people it was close to 6 months. 4 to 6 months, I'm telling people, I don't know, man, I don't know. And then it ends up that they go out of business. And then Louis only found out because he drove down there, because he had orders too of his own that were going through there that weren't being fulfilled. And I already spent the money because I would leverage that money into books or whatever it was. And so now I found out at this time, there's a problem.
Damn.
You know, I either need to find money real quick, or I need to find somebody to make equipment. And got a hold of Louis and said, you know, he was looking, I'm looking, so we're both kind of looking. Then he basically just found somebody for the reverse hyper and said, fuck the other stuff. I said, well, you're cool if I do this other stuff. And I had to go through 3 different manufacturers before I found one that actually wanted to work with me. The problem was, see, the business model was all education based, but free. And then I was going to use the profit from the products to pay for the education. The editing staff, all that. That was the model from the very beginning.
Gotcha.
No equipment manufacturer at the time wanted to deal with anybody online. Nobody, except the couple of rejects that I found that were, it was a nightmare, but got through those. And then I found one willing to do it. And then it was structured in such a way that, you know, we're still together now after all these years later. So it worked very well. And then that was when we went Elite FTS on the equipment, because before there was no name, even with the West Side stuff, there was no name on it. It wasn't a thing back then. You just sold the equipment. Nobody ever thought to put a name on it, right?
Don't stamp it.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I started working with the company down there that we started to brainstorm a little bit more, and it's like schools need to brand their school. You know, like, why can't a high school brand their high school the same way a university does? You know, why can't a training center be able to brand their rack the same way a university does, right? Like a DeFranco, you see the racks, you know, it's branded, it's named, you know when you walk in there. It's like, we need to do this in a way that's they can afford to do, that's not like contacting somebody that's going to make all custom shit for a university. So that came probably, God, I got 5 years in, maybe. I mean, it's 25 years ago now. You know, so it's so far back that it's hard to tell.
So, because I still have, I mean, the equipment stands a test of time.
Oh, it does.
You know, are you manufacturing it now all on your own, or you still have a company?
No, I have somebody, because I can't. The caveat here is I can't afford to do both. Like, if I was to manufacture the equipment, I wouldn't be able to produce the education.
Yeah.
That's why you can't find any equipment manufacturers who have free education.
Yeah.
There's only so much margin that's in that product, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the balance with that. And the deadlift platform that's sitting right there, that was one of the first pieces I ever got that went into the IPA National warm-up room probably 20 years ago.
Wow.
The power squat machine over there is one of the first ones I had in one of our main first locations.
Which one?
The white one that's over there. That's 20 years old too.
Oh, shit.
And it's going to be replaced. This year I've started to replace some of the older shit. Like the leg press was probably 20 years old. And I liked it because I could say, you know what, this is 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I've never done anything to it.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And
I got a reverse hyper that's been with me since Tony.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's still sitting in there.
The one that bolts into the ground?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. That thing will last forever.
Yep.
Man. Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
Certain test time. That's like the thing is like, I look in here and I'm like, I was telling him it's like a meathead's playground.
Oh, yeah.
It's like if I was Toys R Us again, you know what I mean? Like, so much stuff.
Yeah.
When you had this vision, like, did you see this all unfolding?
I saw it bigger.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What stopped it from going that big?
Margins.
Yeah.
I didn't factor in
logistics.
Well, not really the logistics. I didn't factor in how much shit you really need to sell to be able to do what I wanted to do. Right. So and there's a couple times we kind of got close, when I talk like a full content team, like, 7-10 people just blasting stuff out all the time.
Yeah.
Times we kind of got close when it was all written, right? Because now you can, it's different. When it's the video, it's a different skill set.
Sure.
It's a little different things. Content's changed a lot in 25 years.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to. That's a whole nother area you got to pivot through.
Yeah.
Where YouTube just used to be the way to put a video in an article and not have to pay the bandwidth of the video because it was embedded.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until later.
That makes sense.
And a lot of these things I was too slow. Like on YouTube, there were a lot of other people that were monetizing. I'm like, what the fuck you need to monetize? I just need it to embed.
Yeah.
I'm not even worried about like, why the fuck do I don't want people to go to YouTube.
Yeah.
I want them to become my website.
Yeah.
And so that was a little delayed, and it changed over the years too.
For sure, yeah. So right now your focus is on only product, but we're still doing a lot of content. So your content, the product is getting is helping the content, right?
Yes. Without the product, there's no content.
Yeah.
So that's now we do monetize YouTube, which I didn't do before. We have sponsors for the podcast. So we now are starting to monetize content to help offset cost of the content, because I had the margins again. Shipping prices are through the roof, so I got to absorb some of the shipping.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. It's a constant shuffle to be able to balance through there, where it's. In hindsight, I should have monetized content as soon as I could. Not the way people would think, but like the YouTube stuff, like the low hanging, that kind of stuff. Should have monetized that.
Podcast, obviously, sponsorship, everything else too as well that helps.
Yes.
When so grand goals, vision wise, are you looking to scale to sell, or are you keeping this together all the way through?
That changes. Like, obviously, the simple answer is I'm always building to sell, right? Because that's the one metric I watch since I learned business. What is the company worth? What is its valuation? At the end of every year, is that moving in a positive direction? Because anything else that happens under that, I'm not going to say it's not relevant, but it has to feed into what that is.
What's your goal for, I would say, your evaluation percentages every year, increasing percentages? Is it 20% increase?
Fuck, I don't. As long as it goes up, man. It's like a total.
For real.
I've been doing this so long, man, that I can look at gross sales, and that changes because that can go up, but the profit's down. So as long as I try to beat year prior, that's where I focus the most. Because that's fucking harder to do than people think it is.
Man.
I've never had outside of like maybe the first year, I've never had a year where we grew by more than 10%.
That's standard though.
Yeah,
that's actually good though.
Very slow chipping away.
Some are low, like they lose money.
I had years that we went down. You know, 3 years that go down. There's like, fuck, we need to bring it back up. Yeah. You know, to be able to, you know, kind of go into there.
Okay, here's an interesting thing. When it went down, what was your immediate response to bring it back up?
First off, what months were down, right? Because there's seasonality. So in the winter months, it's, you know, smaller items, holidays.
Gotcha.
T-shirts, bands, shit you're gonna buy for gifts.
Yeah,
will happen. And schools are not, and a lot of training centers don't buy equipment at the end of the year. Yeah, they're out of money.
Yeah, true.
Right, and budgets get reestablished at the beginning of the year. Yeah. So, like, what months were off, and then from there I can see what categories are off, and then why is the category off? Is it because there's not enough new items? Is it because we're carrying too many items and the inventory is so high that it's hurting? You know, because everything that's sitting in the warehouse is money that's not in the bank. Yeah. Right. So sometimes you got to move that money from the warehouse into the bank, which is a sale or clearance, stuff like that. Yeah. So that's the first thing is what's not working, right? From big picture. Then why is it not? Is it marketing? You know, where is? Then who knows, right? Because there's so many things that feed into marketing that it's ridiculous, you know. And
do you have anybody that helps you investigate that? Yeah.
Yes, and that's a tricky one too, especially when you're online, right? Because everybody's a fucking Facebook marketing AdWords specialist, right? Until you ask for or the, oh God, what was the other one? The reverse targeting. Yeah. Reverse targeting ads. They're all specialists, right? Yeah. And they'll all take your money, and then when you ask them to validate the ROI, and they do, but then your monthly sales are not higher, they're just taking credit for sales you would have already had. Yeah. So that's a difficult.
You did nothing.
Yes. Yeah. That's a difficult domain to navigate.
That's. Unfortunately, I've ran through a lot of marketing teams like that.
Yes, it's very hard because you have to keep yourself very smart with what's going on, because you have to be able to validate their ROI. Yeah. Because they're always going to be positive.
Well, that was the thing I was talking about, is like being competent in all these different things. Yeah. You know, it's like, I know marketing, sales, you know, making sure that we have customer service on point, making sure that, you know, management is there, the operating services, making sure you have a standard SOP and everything is on point daily. If you are not in it, or you haven't done it, or you just aren't competent in it, things can get pulled over your head.
Daily. I mean, I would love to get to a point where I don't have to worry about these things daily. Daily sales matter for us. It matters. You know, it matters a lot, because that can be, you know, the website went down. You know, like, okay, and you know, I get notifications, but sometimes you don't. You know, it's
the website goes down.
It can go down. I mean, anything can happen.
That's true.
It's business.
It's just, that sucks, man.
Yeah, like, you name anything, it's happened to me.
Well, I have several programs out, and they all have landing pages. And so, like, you'll have my basic, my general website, and then you click links, and then you go to like a click funnel, and then some of those sites will be down. Yep. And then I'll find out through people just DMing me, like, yo, bro, listen. I'm like, all right.
It's a motherfucker, ain't it?
Yeah.
You know, so on like the main page and stuff like that, we have alerts set up that it goes down, I'll get a text.
Nice.
You know, or the guy that does the website will do a text. But we still as a team manually need to go through and like click the education page, click the podcast page. Is it working? Is it feeding? You know, we're all dealing with the same shit with that.
And that's like, you go through that. Is that a weekly meeting that you go through, or you're sitting down with the
I'll meet with them weekly, but I'll do like the content, and I have many indicators, right? So if I'm doing the content indicators, as I'm going through and filling those KSIs out, I'm clicking on those pages, right? And granted, that's just once a week, but that's really too late. But any of any of the big shit I'll probably know beforehand because somebody will DM me or they'll call or say something, you know, so there is that. The store's pretty solid. The store's actually very solid, you know, so that's pretty we have security based around this thing like a motherfucker. My guy is the most paranoid person you've ever met in your entire life.
That's good.
It is good, but it's very frustrating because it slows things.
For sure.
As far as moving forward, like way down, he won't let anybody else on this fucking site. You know, it's like there's a lot of things that it's good, right? Because when you go down for a few hours, man, it hurts.
Yeah.
You know, it hurts, especially if it's like Black Friday. It can fucking really hurt. You know, so stuff imagine. Like that. Yeah.
It's the biggest, probably that plus what? It wouldn't be Christmas, but what would be your other biggest day? Sales?
Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday. Yeah. That makes sense.
Cyber Monday is usually bigger than Black Friday.
Yeah.
But any of that month in November, you know, it all matters.
Yep.
The every fucking day matters. You know, it does, but those matter the most.
We don't have to get into numbers.
Yeah.
But what would you say was your biggest? What's your biggest KPI from the product side? What are you looking at on that end?
There's essentially two businesses here.
Yeah.
Right. So there's what my sales reps do, which is going to come through purchase orders and quotes. That's about 51% of the sales, and that's equipment. But you know, if you're ordering for a gym, you could be putting chains in there. You can be putting accessories. There's other things that can fall in there, but majority is the equipment. You know, the other batch is coming through the website, which is the accessories.
Yeah.
When you start to deal with whatever comes through the fucking t-shirt thing on YouTube, I don't even know the name of it, right? Like Teespring or whatever the fuck we use.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Amazon sales. That shit's so low, it's not even worth paying attention to.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't even.
There's something like that.
It doesn't matter. It's just there. Now the hope is you think when you're setting it up, this is gonna be awesome, right? And it's like, fuck, this is terrible.
Oh man, I had plenty of those.
Yes, like ebooks that we have on Amazon or Apple don't do for shit either.
I'm pretty sure that's all over now.
Yeah.
At this point.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about are articles still relevant?
Yeah. It's a different. It's not for a while it went from like the longer form articles to the blogs. Now it's like medium form articles, but I don't think those are ever going to go away.
Yeah,
because there's years ago with the site, it used to be if you had an author, there's the credibility factor, where if they were a coach and then they wrote the article, that solidified that they knew what they were doing, because you could see they know what they're doing. You know, but if they were a coach, then they had a training log, and they were competitive. You could see they know what they're doing. They're practicing with it. So there's like a trifecta that would help with the team members that we had at the time. The Facebook essentially killed the coaching logs, right? Because they just post on there. And then Instagram essentially killed the training logs because it's easier to follow the lifters just on Instagram. The articles, there's been nothing that came around to kind of wipe that out. YouTube and long form podcasts have grown. You know, that's the podcast is more than I thought it was going to be. As far as
you're going harder now.
Well, it's when you see these other pieces of content, especially like 1 million pages of content, fade away because of social. You know, the training logs and blogs is like, what's gonna replace that? Like, what's gonna go there? It's like, well, fucking no. Like, YouTube, it can't just be YouTube, and it can't just be fucking shorts and reels. Like, it can't be microblogs on Instagram. Like, what else? Like, what's gonna fit that bigger long form article piece? You know, and the podcast did. And what's gonna fit the piece that's gonna allow us to showcase other people? As the articles did, the coaches do, you know, that kind of stuff, because I don't want the brand to ever completely be about me, because if we're talking about valuation, now we're talking about lowering my valuation. You know, so there's got to be other.
That's what I was saying. Like, do you see yourself as the face of Elite FTS?
It can be. I've consciously over the years tried to, if I felt that was becoming too big, I would pull myself out of all content. You know, so if the articles became, my articles were always the best articles, I quit writing. If my training log became the best training log, I quit posting it. You know, that way the other people can be pushed forward, you know, with that intent.
Yep, similar.
Yes.
Similar to what I'm doing now.
Now the podcast, it's different because while they're listening to me every single week, we're talking about you, right? So you're the focus.
Yeah, it's the same with me.
Yeah.
With the podcast, it's like it gives me another stream of content that we can utilize and again showcase individuals that I like to talk to.
Yes.
You know, like we can sit here. I can have my podcast right now.
Yeah.
We could do this a whole another 2-3 hours. You know, and we will do it. I'll come out here with
no, that'd be great.
But like, I think that. One, you're giving out quality content. It's free content for that. You know, people don't have to pay for it. They can show support, you know, all of that good stuff. We can get the sponsors involved. But it's a commitment. And I think that was one thing that I forgot to say was like, I'm heavy into podcasts now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like building out a full studio, you know, and I'm doing it to where even like renting out the space for others to come in and podcast in my space. You know, so I'm creating another business on the side that is still correlated with Daru Strong, and it's just Daru Strong Productions as opposed to Daru Strong Training.
There's a lot of people that could use a studio to be able to do it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like local, even local gym, other local gyms. I'm like, yo, come through.
Yeah,
it's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
You know, or companies that we work with, businesses across the street that we work with that like need that content, they need that marketing.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, here, use my guy. Might as well. We have everything here. You just pay for the, you know, the studio space, pay for the time, and we're good. And we can all help each other, and that's cross promoting.
Yep.
So now, you know, we get support from local businesses. That's the biggest thing now. It's like I've been able to like get myself world renowned, like known worldwide in a sense. I'm looking to go back into my community and bring it down and condense it so that I can work with my local people and help the community out. Like I'm back in Deerfield, right? I was in Boca for a little bit, and I saw this place open up, and I was like, this is right near my old neighborhood. I was like, I'm doing this right here. And it's not the greatest neighborhood. It's in a good spot. It's in a brand new shopping plaza, which this is the first time I've been in a shopping plaza. I've always been in a warehouse. So I'm like getting foot traffic out the ass. It's weird, right? And I go, I want to take this whole space over. And I want to create an opportunity for the kids that come in here that are going to be in a positive environment as opposed to going out there and doing dumb shit like I used to do. There was a kid the other day, it was like tragedy, man. Like kids get shot out there every day in the football field that I used to play on, right in the back of my gym right now. And I go, there's got to be a better way. So I'm coming up and trying to put a space in there for those kids to just come in and train and be a part of something that's a little bit more positive, you know, a lot more positive than what they're getting, you know. And then they walk in and they got Timberland there, they got, you know, NBA players in there, they got UFC fighters in there, and they're like, damn, these guys are getting after it in a positive environment, and it's getting me out of the streets.
Yeah.
Giving me something to do instead of smoking weed and doing dumb shit.
No, that's freaking awesome.
Yeah, so I got this charity that I'm trying to open up. It's been like 2 years in the making, but it's called Warrior Shepherds. So it's for the disadvantaged youth. We're gonna do mentorship, we're gonna do fitness, we're gonna do financial literacy too as well. Teach them how to like save their money, teach them how to invest, teach them how to monetize all their assets, and also content creation. Like, these kids want to do it, fine, let's teach them the right way. Let's teach them how to do things that are going to be beneficial and give high value as opposed to just dumb stuff. Because I mean, entertainment is good, it kind of distracts you, but there's no higher value than at least giving some information out there. And you know this.
Well, they're going to do it anyhow.
They're going to do it. It's going to happen. It happens organically in a lot of ways too as well. Like for me, I like the term infotainment. You know, like I'm still giving you some quality advice, some information, and I'm making it entertaining in the same realm. So that's where like you can merge the two, because I'm transitioning. Like it's funny because we come up in an era, especially with me and like the hip hop culture, is like I still listen to some of the stuff that my daughters listen to, whereas like, you know, I still listen to old school, like everything, country, whatever. I'm eclectic in a sense, right? But like my parents were listening to what I was listening to when I was a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My my wife listens to the music that my daughters listen to, or my son likes. It's just a different, I guess, hip hop culture changed everything.
Yeah.
And so it transitioned into everything that we do, TikTok, you know, Instagram, everything. And so we have to adapt with the time. So with these kids coming in, like if I bring Timbaland in, they probably don't know who Tim is, obviously, but they know who he's worked with. And I bring these other young rappers that come in here that want to get a workout in. They're like, man, that's such and such. That's a good thing, because then they can communicate that with me. Mm-hmm. We can connect. Like, it's just another level of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's another level of connection that I can get with them, as opposed to just being like reprimanding them or telling them what to do and all that. I could be like, yo, you catch the game last night, or you watched that concert, or, you know, something that's going to involve them getting more energy out of me. Mm-hmm. And they go, oh, he's cool, I like him. And then he also teaches me stuff, right? So like, he's nice, he understands where I'm from, he's from where I'm from, and he's giving me some quality advice. That resonates with a lot of young athletes, a lot of young people, because they gotta know that you know where they've been and what they have to go through. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with the fighters, is because I've been able to connect with the fighters because I've been in it. I weight cut it, I fought before, I know how it feels. So they have to connect with that. And a lot of guys that'll come in outside of the neighborhood, they try to come in and they try to help. Kids don't take to him because they're like, I can't relate to this guy. I don't even know who he is. He doesn't know how I feel. He doesn't know what I go through. But I do. So it's a better connection that way. So hopefully we put them kids on the right path, you know, and we have more successful people coming out of that neighborhood as opposed to failures.
I believe there will be.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, out of everything that you were talking about today, you're most excited talking about that.
Yeah.
You know, so lean into that.
Yeah.
You know, which I think you're already doing anyhow.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, because there's a higher level of purpose, you know. We talked about, like, you know, when you're like, what was your most proudest moment? You know, in a sense, like, really, it's like, it's not yet there yet. You know, I know it's coming, but it's not there. Mm-hmm. Like, the moment I can really solidify a positive position in the world that I grew up in and came from, that's really the end goal, you know. Because I can do things in different, like I said, I'm going to Spain in 2 months. And I've been in certain areas, and I want to help people that don't have the ability to help themselves. Mm-hmm. And so for that, I've been able to put myself in a position to do so. And I think when God is ready, He'll put me in an ultimate position to help as many people as possible. Right now, I got to start small and grow from there. Mm-hmm. You know, and in due time, and it's all based on my readiness. And it's not on me; it's on a higher power. So we'll just wait and see what's up. Yeah. I'll just stay the course.
Where do you want people to contact you?
Instagram is easiest to find me. So at Daru Strong. My website's darustrong.com. And every other platform. So Twitter is Daru Strong. And my YouTube channel, Phil Daru Strong.
That's easy to do when you start early, right?
Yeah.
You can get it across all platforms.
All the boards.
Yeah.
I'm taking it over.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Thank you for coming out.
Man, it's been an honor.
All the links are in the bio.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. This was a great time.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. And guys, we're out.
All right.